Welcome back. I felt a lot of ways about that woo, because first of all, I didn't ask for woo, so it was really nice that you gave me one, but it was so tired and metabolizing post-lunch that it was really, really like scurvy-ish. Okay, we are now gonna, is this for real, the line? This is self-made? Is this hiring managers? Jesus, okay, let's do it. Our next session is jobs. Jobs? Jobs. We've got a line of hiring managers, and I'm going to provide a little bit of guidance in just a moment about what that's going to look like. But first, I wanted to take care of some minor housekeeping issues. I'm drunk on power with 2 microphones up here. Give me 1 second. First of all, if you're posting photos or maybe some of your favorite quotations from the day, awesome. We're using the same hashtag on all platforms, and that hashtag is WorkItFestival. Also, a quick update on the second stage. It sounds like a lot of people have checked out some of the programming there. It's been packed for a really good portion of the morning. However, at 2:30, Jane Marie will be unable to present, unfortunately, so that stage will be dark. And then we'll pick up again at 3 p.m. with Gina Delvac and Cher Vincent with their Womanfesto. There is no I in team, but all I have is me, M-E. That's the second stage. If you're at all confused about that, check the website and that'll be updated. All right, jobs. Jobs? Jobs. I practiced that at home because I wasn't sure how to do it, and I feel like I still don't have it down. Okay, I'm now going to invite a series of hiring managers to come on stage. This is the information that I'm going to ask from you. We got a really long line, which is awesome and speaks well of our prospects, but it can't take too long. I'm going to be really insistent on how this is going to go. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to hand you a microphone. I'm going to look at you encouragingly for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to start to glare at you at 31 seconds. And I'm going to get increasingly like the Oscars and start taking things away. But I'd love it if you'd share your name, what the job is that you're hiring for, where it's located, how and where people can apply, and how a potential candidate can contact you. Are you ready? It doesn't matter. Here we go. All right, we've got a great line. I'm going to ask for all of you. Let's make like kind of we're going to come on stage here in the light, the spotlight. Yep, great. You're doing everything as I would hope. I'm going to hand you this microphone. Okay? This is my encouraging face.
I love it.
Okay? Then, as soon as you're done, you'll hand the microphone to the next hiring manager behind you, and you can exit stage right. That's what we call the right of the stage in the business. Okay. Ready? Here we go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shira Atkins. I'm one of the co-founders of Wonder Media Network. We're a podcasting company focused on lifting up underrepresented voices and women's voices in politics, business, and culture. We are hiring for our 8-person team in Lower Manhattan. 3 salespeople and 2 producers. So you can find that information on wondermedianetwork.com/jobs. And you can email me, find me, Shira@wondermedianetwork.com. Thank you.
Perfectly done.
Beautiful. How do you follow that? Hi, my name is Janine Wright. I am the COO at Simplecast. Simplecast is a podcasting technologies platform, hosting, distribution, analytics. We are hiring 2 roles in sales. We're hiring an enterprise account manager and a sales development rep, which is more like an entry-level sales role. We're focusing on New York and Los Angeles, but we are a distributed team. So if you're interested, no matter where you live, go ahead and apply. You go to simplecast.com/careers to apply. You can find me or you can email me. It's Janine@simplecast.com. We'll soon be opening a job rec for a senior product designer as well. So if you're interested in that and you want to jump the gun, go ahead and email me about that one too.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Jen Sargent. I'm the COO of Wondery. We are one of the largest independent podcast publishers out there, known for our immersive storytelling for shows like Dirty John, Dr. Death, Business Wars. We also are hiring across the board, sales, marketing, content, business development type positions in both New York and Los Angeles. You can find more about these on wondery.com/careers. You can email us at careers@wondery.com, and you can email me personally at jen@wondery.com. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deirdre Debke. I'm the executive producer of The Takeaway. I'm here to pitch you on a traditional radio job, public media. We need a line producer who runs our show in the morning, working with our host, Tanzina Vega. You need to be a news hound, you need to be willing to live in New York, and you need to be willing to come to work at 6:45 in the morning. But if all those things sound like you, it's a fantastic position, a senior position at our organization. You can apply at WNYC.org, and I'm also going to hang out for the next hour in the mentoring room. So if you want to come down, talk to me, and hear more about it, please do. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Matilde Piard. I'm a senior project manager at NPR. I am not the hiring manager for the roles I'm going to mention, but I still wanted to plug them. At NPR, there's a couple positions on our jobs website right now. In marketing, there's a couple producer and editor positions at Morning Edition and All Things Considered, and I think Weekend, All Things Considered, and then there's a couple election-related jobs. And you can find all of those on our job site. I actually don't remember the URL, but you know, Google works. And I am happy to give my email address, but again, I'm not the hiring manager. My email address, if you have questions about working at NPR in general, is M for maple syrup, PIARD. So first initial, last name, at npr.org. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Kane. I oversee podcasting at KQED, an NPR station in San Francisco. I am hiring, thank you, I'm hiring for 2 roles for the Truth Be Told podcast. That's hosted by Tanya Mosley. We're getting ready to build up our 2nd season, and I'm hiring for a producer and for an engagement producer. Those jobs are based in San Francisco. The best way to reach out to, I'll be here today and tomorrow, come find me and talk to me about it. Also email me, jkane, C-A-I-N-E, at kqed.org, and I will share you all that information. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess Cordova-Kramer from Lemonada Media. We're a brand new podcast network run by 2 women. We have a brand new show that just came out called Last Day that zooms in on epidemics that are killing us, starting in season 1 with the opioids crisis. It just launched a couple of weeks ago. We have a new show coming out called As Me with Sinead. Sinead is a disability activist, and we're hiring an assistant producer for that show. We also have a show called Good Kids, How Not to Raise an Asshole coming out, and we're looking for an editor. And we just signed with NFL activist Michael Bennett from the Patriots to do a show with his wife, and we're looking for a senior producer who's gonna live in Boston and help produce that show, and also an editor who can live anywhere. So email me if you're interested in working with us. We're gonna be hiring a ton over the next few years, I don't know, whenever, whatever timeline. It's Jess at Lemonada, Lemonada, media.com. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Renee Mejres. I'm the host of This Is Uncomfortable from Marketplace, and we're looking to grow our team just temporarily. We're looking for a producer who can work with us for a couple of months, remote, narrative experience, ASAP. And then we're also looking for an intern with the on-demand team to start in January, but that position is open. You can find it online at Marketplace, APM Jobs, and you can contact me. I'll be around. My email is rkhrais@marketplace.org. I don't know if anyone got that, but.
Hi, I'm Kate Crochelle. I work on a show called 70 Million, which is about criminal justice reform, specifically about jail reform. And we are looking for 2 editors for season 3. Just long-form journalism, audio experience is great. It's a remote position, so anywhere in the world you would like to be. And you can email us at hello@70millionpod.com. That's 70millionpod.com. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Maria Gross. I'm at KCUR, the public radio station in Kansas City, Missouri. We cover Missouri and Kansas. Thank you. We are expanding and hiring for my boss, the director of journalism, who oversees news, talk shows, digital, podcasts. So that's an exciting position. Also, 6 election-related positions for the next 15 months, part of a CPB grant that is based in Kansas City but is national. Some of those positions will be remote, so apply now. I'm Sylvia at kcur.org. I can answer questions. That's Sylvia, Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kenny. I'm the VP of Programming at Gimlet Media, a Spotify company. Still getting used to saying that. We have a bunch of open roles right now on a bunch of different shows. We have a producer role on The Cut, which is a show we make with New York Magazine. We have a producer role on The Journal, a show we make with the Wall Street Journal. We also have some development producer roles open in California, one for a senior producer and one for a regular producer. And we're also looking for a contract producer on The Nod. You can find all of those at gimletmedia.com/careers, or I'll be here for the next 2 days, and you can just come and grab me. I would love to talk to you about them. Thanks so much.
Hello, here's a horse of a different color. I'm Jacqueline Landgraf. I'm the creator of It Makes a Sound on Night Vale Presents PRX Network. Thank you. It's audio fiction. I'm not sure if there's a lot of people in the room who are into audio fiction. Thank you. 3 people, yes. I am in pre-production for the 2nd season, and I'm looking for 2 jobs. One is a short-term freelance position to help me with Korean translation on scripts. And the second is a casting opportunity. I am looking for a New York-based actor. The character is an 80-year-old Korean-born woman who is fluent in Korean and English. So I would love to collaborate with a Work It person. So if you know anybody who might fit that description and would like to submit to me, I think the easiest way to contact me is through Twitter. It's at Jack Landgraf, so JACQLANDGRAF. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Flo Wiley. I'm the operations manager at Snap Judgment in Oakland, California. Snap Judgment is looking for a story scout for episodes focused on true first-person stories from first and second generation African immigrants to the United States. The story scout is in charge of finding 12 pitches for Snap Judgment, which are viable and match the voice, personality, and content parameters of the show. Understanding of Snap Judgment's voice and familiarity with our catalog is critical. The ability to identify stories from African immigrants that are outside the realm of predictable cliché or stereotype is also important. Commitment to fair and respectful storytelling is what we are looking for. If you are interested, you can see me. I'll be here today and tomorrow, and we can exchange cards, and I'll send you a copy of the job description, or you can send your resume and your cover letter to jobs@snapjudgment.org. Thank you.
I'm Rebecca Horn, the multimedia director at spectrumnews.org, which is a website that is really dedicated towards reaching scientists. And so I'm looking for someone, hopefully with some science background, with the journalism background, someone who's not afraid to read scientific papers and interview scientists on a regular basis as a full-time freelancer, and it could also be a full-time freelancer and audio producer combination, maybe even a production company, I'm not exactly sure. If you think you're interested and you want to talk to me more about it, find me, I'll be here for the rest of the day. My email is Rebecca, REBECCA, @spectrumnews.org. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Haley. I'm the Digital Technology Coordinator at Art19, which is a hosting, distribution, and monetization platform based in Oakland, California. We serve some of the biggest customers in podcasting, including the New York Times, NBC Universal, and Wondery, powering hundreds of millions of podcast downloads every month. We are looking for passionate podcast people to join our growing teams in New York, LA, and our Oakland headquarters. And we're hiring for positions in advertising, design, engineering, and more. If you're interested in engaging with a new side of podcasting, you can reach out to us at hello@art19.com or find us here at Werk It.
Hi, I'm Katie Springer, and this is Kayla Littman.
Hi, nice to meet you. We're here from Vox Media.
So we are hiring right this minute for a writer-producer for branded audio. That means we're looking for someone who can churn out awesome advertising copy and also produce really great, compelling short-form content. We are also presenting tomorrow, so come down at 2:15 right here, all about podcast advertising. Oh, you can find me at katie.sprenger, SPRENGER, @voxmedia.com. Email me directly. I would love to hear from you.
Yep, and she's a joy to work with, so please email her. We need you. Thank you.
Now. Hey everybody, I'm Werk Nguyen. I co-host and produce Adult-ish, and that's a show by YR Media and Radiotopia. We are currently looking for a full-time producer. We're just a team of 3 right now. I'm the only woman on the team. So we're at Werk It, that's great. So if you like pop culture, if you are into figuring out your adult shit, hence the adult-ish, if you are engaged with, if you're a young millennial, you're into that stuff, or like a Gen Z, that's our demographic, we would love to work with you. So feel free to find me. I'm wearing a beanie. I'm going to be wearing this fanny pack this whole weekend. But Angela at YR Media, I'm not the hiring manager, but again, would love to talk to you. Yeah, it's lit.
Hi, I'm Erin Fleming. I am the executive producer of an arts and culture podcast from the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art called Raw Material, and I actually commission seasons by independent podcasters, so you could be that next producer and host for us. And I'm really interested in doing a future season around true crime, true art crime. So if that is your thing, or investigative journalism, and you're interested in creating for a museum, then you can find me or email me at efleming@sfmoma.org. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca. I work in content at Acast, a hosting, distribution, and monetization platform for podcasters, obviously. We're hiring for a US creative lead who will be working very closely with our sales team to develop content, creative content, ideas for our brand partners. Beyond that, we're also hiring a ton of positions in marketing, international expansion, and PR all over the world in Norway, Germany, US, the UK, Australia, Canada, Sweden, Ireland, New Zealand, France, and we are launching in Mexico. You can find the job listings on acast.com/jobs or email me, rebecca@acast.com.
Hi there, my name is Claire Slaughter. I am reporting from HeadGum. We're a comedy podcast network that's located right over in the Arts District in LA. We're hiring for 2 roles. First off, a producer role to help us launch a number of new comedy originals rolling out this winter. Full-time availability, but it's a pretty flexible role. So if you just want to get your hands in on some producing, talk to us about that. And then an internship. So anyone who's super green and wants to learn about engineering and producing and marketing and all of those things, 2 to 3 days a week, talk to us. You can find out more at headgum.com/about or email me. I'm Claire@headgum.com. Claire does not have an I in it. It's CLARE. Okay.
Hello, I'm Laura Flynn, a producer on Intercepted, a podcast production of The Intercept and First Look Media. We're hiring a senior producer, so someone who's going to be my boss, and oversee our other podcasts, including Deconstructed, Murderville, and also work with The Intercept's journalists to develop new content, new shows. So you can find out more at The Intercept. The job's not quite posted yet, but will be in the next few days. And if you have general questions about what it's like to work at The Intercept, you can find me here or email me, laura.flynn@theintercept.com. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Katie Christian. I'm one of the co-founders of Summer Audio. We are a brand new company that was just announced last week in the Hollywood Reporter. We finance, produce, and distribute fiction podcasts with a pipeline to film and television. We are looking for a Los Angeles-based intern who's interested in learning about how to build a company from the ground up, who has interest in the audio space, as well as film and television. We're also crewing up across a slate of scripted audio series, so if you are an editor, a sound designer, we want to hear from you. We would love to be working with you. You can contact me directly at Katie, Katie, @summer-audio.com.
Hi, my name is Beth McNamara. I am independently producing a documentary series. It's a true crime. So I am looking for somebody who is a FOIA nut, who can just easily write a FOIA, who can find police documents. You can reach me at beth@bethmcnamara.com.
Fantastic. This is the time when we move to 17 seconds per speaker.
Oh, we got this. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Bettina. This is Sarah, part of the content partnerships team at Spotify.
So we're hiring for 3 positions in the LA area, an exclusives lead, as well as 2 partner managers who can help bring our exclusives team to life. If you like to work hard, hustle, and work with smart, interesting people, then this is definitely the role for you.
So we'll be here for the next 2 days. Feel free to come say hi. If the job is interesting to you, you can find more information on the Spotify website, spotify.com/careers, I believe. Yeah. Cool, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, hot baton, let's roll.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zan Strumfeld, and I work for the Logan Nonfiction Program. We're a residency for nonfiction creators. So we're based in upstate New York. If you have 5 to 10 weeks where you can work on your long-form, deeply reported work, we have really good podcasting equipment. I'm in these green pants if you want to come and talk to me. But you can just look up Logan Nonfiction Program on Google. It's probably the easiest way to find. Or email nonfiction@careyinstitute.com or .org, excuse me. Yeah, we have open enrollment for 2 times a year. We have our residency. So thanks. Perfect.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today to improve yourself and in your careers. I just had my 3rd cup of coffee, so I hope this is really fast. My name is Christine. I manage a startup internet radio station over in the city of Whittier, California. If you guys heard about it, it's called WIPA Radio, and we're currently looking for programming. It's a full-service internet radio format, so anything that you guys have, I'd love to hear it. We need more women programming on this program, so we have like a lot of shows, but they're all geared towards men. I don't know, men just want to do it. But please, I'd love to have women on. Email us, info@wiparadio.com, or check us out on social, WIPA Radio, for more info. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Hi there, I'm Rachel Corbett. I've got an Australian accent and I'm going to be super quick. I'm the head of podcasts for a company, a media organisation, women's media organisation called Mamma Mia, not to be confused with a musical over in Australia. We're expanding and doing a lot of like lumpy stuff, so we need contract producers, editors. So anybody that's keen on doing some freelance work, contact me at rachel.corbett@mammamia.com.au. And Rachel doesn't have an A in the middle, RACHEL.
Hi, I'm Kumari Devarajan. I work for NPR's Code Switch podcast, and we'll soon be hiring a reporter-producer hybrid. We're looking for someone of color, priority to Native, Latinx, and LGBTQ folks. It would be in New York, DC, or LA.
Gosh, last one. I'm Nicole Wong. I work at Gimlet Creative, part of Gimlet Media and Spotify. Right now we're hiring for a supervising producer and an associate producer. These people, we want to be really excited about working on like any type of show, a variety of show. We were developing things with Spotify, and then we're also hiring for a mid-roll producer. Our team has really paved the way of what innovative ads sound like. So if like advertising content and experimenting with that, what that could sound like in the future and beyond, come find me and talk to me. And thank you very much.
All right, and we're back. We're live. Ricardo, I'm going to hand this to you to put this on the thing. You know when you go through an apartment and you imagine how your life is going to be so different if you rent this one? Like, I'm going to have a kitchen with an island and I'm going to be a good cook now. I'm applying to every single job. So if you're applying to any of those jobs, you have competition with me. They all sound fantastic. Okay, for our next session, we are going to be joined by the world's first podcast librarian and content strategist, Plaut. She works with RadioPublic, Google Podcasts, PRX Podcast Creator Program Advisory Committee. She also serves there. She's here to share her tips and her tricks for web strategy for podcasters, which I think also is going to make her a very popular member of our community here. Can you please help me welcome Plaut to stage?
Hi, everybody. As she said, I'm Mayan. And I, unlike right now, I'm actually wearing a lot of hats in podcasting, like many of you. As the content strategist and podcast librarian at RadioPublic, coolest job in the world, by the way. I love wearing my content party hat. I wore it a lot at my last job, where I was managing social media and content strategy at Oberlin College. But right now in Podlandia, way better, because all of you make things. It is amazing, and I get to celebrate that every single day. I also really, really love breaking down every single thing that we make into much smaller pieces, and then we organize them in other ways. I love doing creative work once and then making the most of it, consistently and easily in more than one place. I also really love podcasts, like a lot. I love that people make them. I love listening to them. and I really love talking about them. I also like podcasts. Okay, good, you guys laughed, thank you. I was so worried. Podcasts, cat's pajamas. But podcasts are important and podcats are important because if you didn't know this already, cats power the internet. And the internet powers podcasts. We're going to merge podcasts and the glorious thing that are the internet together for audience growth. That's right, we're going to do exactly that. I like that the internet is a place of possibility. I don't think it's going to save the world, but I do think that we are going to be a part of that. I believe that it's a place of possibility for podcasts too. Podcast exists because of the internet. And I help podcasts and the rest of the internet get closer together, to work together well, and to learn from each other. I am joined by my friend Pusheen the cat. If you have never met Pusheen before, welcome. So please enjoy the beautiful stylings of Claire Belton as I talk about web strategy and podcasts and the beautiful things that they can become together. So we're gonna be talking about 3 primary sections of the internet and how and why we're going to use them for your podcast audience development strategies. Those things are going to be websites, email campaigns, and social media campaigns. I know that overwhelm and anxiety can lead to procrastination, but here's the thing, I know all of you here can do this, and here is why I know this. You have made an amazing thing. The awesome audio you made is just the start, and we are going to get people to your show, we're going to engage and retain your listeners, and we're gonna do it all with the power of your brand and the power of the web. Yes? Yes, everybody? Yes, good. Thank you. Web strategy is achievable for every single podcaster, whether you're working solo, on a team, or with a network or studio. A lot of what I'm going to describe today is work that you do one time, or sometimes rather than all of the time. And especially if you're a solo or an indie out here, strategy is your support. That's it. And building an adaptable web marketing strategy is going to be a part of that. The reason why I'm able to give this talk so emphatically today is this is how a podcast content strategist works. And this is also how the people that I work with think and create tools as well. So RadioPublic, where I work, builds tools to help podcasters spend more time making their show and less time making a website and a marketing presence. Because we know that those things are important for the ongoing existence of your podcast, but we also want those opportunities to be within everybody's grasp. So my motto, if you want to sustain yourself, be strategic to be efficient. Even doing 1 or 2 of the things I'm going to talk about today, that's gonna help you. It's gonna help you a lot, and I know that you're gonna be able to do it because all these slides available later, podcast, live stream, all of that, and there are a lot of resources that I'm going to share at the end as well. So, we're gonna do this. First, we're going to define a very important thing when we're talking about marketing. Yes, marketing. Marketing is what helps you grow your audience, and in order to start marketing, we need to know who's your audience. You have one main goal as a podcaster. You want people to listen to your podcast. All of the other goals, like connecting with your audience, engaging with your fans, and making money, all of that requires you to have listeners. Your main goal is to get people to listen to your podcast. So, a question you've probably been asking yourself already, who is the audience for your podcast's web presence? For the sake of this talk, there are 2 audiences of listeners. That first group, people who listen to podcasts already, that's you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for existing. I love you. And you make this whole thing possible, all of the listeners that are like you. That second group are the people who haven't listened to a podcast yet. And a subset of this audience for me is people who've listened to a podcast, but they haven't listened to your podcast yet. So different yet complementary strategies for both of these audiences, and we're going to cover both, but I'm going to spend a lot more time focusing on that second audience, the people who haven't listened to a podcast yet. That is where true growing the pie audience growth is happening, and luckily, many of the strategies for this audience also helps with existing listeners too. Let's get this out of the way first, y'all. What isn't podcast web strategy? These are things that use the internet in some way or another and can make you feel like you're doing work on the web, but it isn't strategic. And that takes a lot of your time and energy without getting you where you want to go. The first thing, oh, we're gonna do this later. I hear this a lot. And the reason why I don't like it is it really translates to you're never going to do it. If you do something sometimes, if there's no reason for doing it, you're not motivated to spend time on it, and then you also aren't going to see any results. So that means posting an episode on Twitter sometimes isn't really a strategy, and neither is sending an email or updating your website when you remember to do it. If you integrate web communications into your process, it's not only strategic, but it ends up saving time later. The second thing, web strategy is not engagement. And as a former social media strategist, if I can get any point across today other than the fact, web strategy, you totally need that, garnering engagement does not equal the desired outcome that you're hoping for. For your podcast, you have one main goal, to help people listen to the podcast. Engagement with a social media post doesn't equal somebody listen to your podcast. You have to know what you're measuring for when you're doing things on the web smartly. And unlike podcast analytics, web analytics are something that you can start using to your advantage right away to understand both your efforts and your audience. The third thing, unmeasurable and unreplicable approaches mean that there are no clear outcomes. For podcast web strategy to work, there have to be questions and there have to be answers, even if you don't get the answer that you're expecting. Think about everything you're doing as a miniature experiment. Your thesis, did somebody listen to the podcast based on the action that I took? How will I know that the listening happened? And what else can I learn from this experiment? Get really clear on what you're trying to gain from somebody doing something on the web and figure out how you're going to have numbers and the outcomes to support your goal of increasing podcast listenership. Now that you know what you're not looking for, here is what we can and will do with podcast web strategy. This is where you're going to put your energy in smart and efficient ways to make audience growth happen both strategically and awesomely for your podcast. So, the first thing, we are going to take small and deliberate steps to building a digital strategy for your podcast. What this means if you're listening right now, choose one thing, just one, to get started on immediately after this talk or when you get home, either one. Something here that I'm going to talk about is going to speak to you, and you're going to go home and you're going to do it, and you're going to be amazing at it, and you're going to feel awesome for it, and you're also going to tell me about it because I love celebrating people doing this. It's going to work. There is no one single switch that we flip when it comes to podcast web strategy and audience growth. There are a lot of little small things that we do in order to get everything moving together in unison. The next, we are going to build awareness while bringing in new listeners. So awareness is a pretty easy goal for any campaign, but it's not going to be enough for us today. We're going to focus on activities that are intentional about bringing in new listeners. Awareness also means that the things that you do should feel good and right to the people who already listen to your podcast. And ideally, those people also see this campaign and will like it enough that they pass it on, which will never hurt. Last, we are going to be numbers informed, and we are going to learn from everything that we do so we have a model for replicable next steps. Each of these strategies, websites, email newsletters, and social media, all of them are web-based, which means there is some kind of analytics built in. Asking good questions that can be supported by answers will help you design and implement again next time. If you're a person out here with a website and newsletters and social media already, yes, awesome. The strategies I'm going to share here today should help you improve that web presence with an eye towards audience development. So, audience development, I think of it in two parts. There's audience growth and there's audience retention. Audience growth is getting new listeners. We're going to think first and foremost about the needs of the people who haven't listened to a podcast yet, because they help grow the whole pie, and they are the ones who need the most help to start listening. So we're going to get those new listeners in the door with a podcast website. Then we are going to retain your new listeners with email newsletters and social media campaigns. Luckily, both email and social also very good at helping move beyond this primary audience of listeners, making current listeners into fans who are going to also spread your show for you. So, podcast websites. Why do you want that thing? So, we are going to start with a podcast website because it helps us with ownership, findability, and simplicity. The first reason, ownership. This is both ownership over your content and how it's displayed, and it's also ownership of your relationships with your listeners. You're making this podcast, and you should have control how this is shown to people. And you should also have a direct connection with your listeners that isn't mediated through somebody else or through another platform. Your audience is loyal to you, and you should be able to connect with them directly. The alternative is that your audience belongs to somebody else. And since your listeners are the root of everything that you're building, that direct relationship is everything. Additionally, a relationship with a listener, it's always in development. So landing on your podcast website offers a number of different ways for a visitor to show interest in your podcast. So maybe they start listening, which is a very strong signal that they're interested in you, but it also might not be their first step. There are other smaller steps that a visitor might take first to begin their relationship with you. Maybe they're reading an article, or they click on a social media link, or they sign up for your newsletter. And all of those things are a signal that they are interested in you. If you use your website as a hub for listener engagement, it means that your visitors can come to you and your work on their terms. The second reason for website is findability. A website is available all over the world, and people already know how to search for things on the web. When you add together ownership and findability, what you get is super solid search engine optimization. That means making sure your work is available and aligned with the people who are searching for it. Apps aren't always the default for listening for everybody, but web search, that is already second nature to us. A website assures that your show can be found by everybody, the new to podcast folks and the people who are new to your podcast too. The last reason is simplicity. Having a podcast website means that there's only one thing that you need to say and spell and remember on your show. One place to help your listeners and find everything they want related to your show, and it's also one place to convert all of those new visitors into listeners. Maintaining a website may sound like it's hard, but here's the thing. It's really important for the ongoing longevity of your podcast. This is how podcasts stick around for the future. And we're also going to spend time on this once, which is going to help you in the long term for your audience growth. I hope you're convinced that you need a podcast website, because I'm very much here to help you do that. But if you have a website already, we're gonna make sure that your website is doing all of the things that you want it to do, which is help people learn about and listen to your podcast. All of the building blocks of your podcast website help you establish your podcast elsewhere online, and it helps a listener start and deepen their relationship with you. So let's get that website looking good. There are some key elements to presenting your podcast on your website: gateway episodes, a host or contributor bio and headshots, a logline, listener testimonials and press mentions, a video trailer, a where to listen page, and original articles. We're going to go through all of them one by one so you know what they are, how to make them happen, and where else you can start to use them on the web right away. And all of the website versions I'm going to share here, they're all made with Podsites, which is RadioPublic's custom podcast website builder, and they were made very quickly. At least 2 of the ones you're going to see were made in less than a day. So, gateway episodes. These are known as a featured episode, a start here episode, or a highlighted episode. Gateway episodes are very important to new listeners. So when you're presented with a long list of episodes, it's kind of hard to know where to get started. So do we start at the top? Do we start at the bottom? Somewhere in the middle is probably going to be the most representative and best episode for somebody. From this episode, more listening will be a very natural next step. A Start Here episode provides a way for a podcaster to showcase a specific episode, just like a pinned post on social media. It's your way of saying, I know this is the good stuff, and I really want you to hear this one first. A great gateway episode has a few indicators, like an immediate hook. So a listener gets right in, and they can't help but want to continue listening. It works as a standalone piece, with no inside jokes and no back references. It's also a can't miss episode. So if a listener only hears this one thing, they know what's up. But the most important thing about a gateway episode, it really leaves the listener hungry for more like it. They like this one, and then they want another, and another, and another. You can start choosing your gateway episodes by asking yourself which episodes are best, and you can also ask your listeners which they think are the best too. You can also start to look at your listening data for clues or confirmation that people have spent quality time with this episode as well. The easiest ones to start with tend to be a trailer, the first episode of a serialized narrative, or the first episode of season 1. Once you have that gateway episode, you can put them into action right away. So you can put it on the front page of your podcast website, or you can pin it to the top of your social media accounts. You can also add it to your press kit to help you with media outreach and publication outreach. And you can also start to let your fans know that these episodes exist through your email newsletter, so they can help introduce your show to new listeners too. One of the most wonderful things about podcasts, at least for me, hopefully for you too, is that I feel extremely connected to the voices that I hear on the show, which is awesome. But if someone has never listened to your podcast before and they don't know that warm feeling of your voice, they haven't pressed play yet. So you're gonna need to convince them that you are the person that they want to hear from. A short description of the people who make the show, both on the mic and behind the scenes, helps loads in this situation. I find that it's best when this bio is written in your voice, and it demonstrates your expertise, and it also says a little more about your place in the world. This information is also awesome for someone who's writing about your podcast, because they'll get all of the relevant details of the people who make it all in one place. With that writing hat on, we are also going to write a log line, which is just a fancy phrase for saying a brief and compelling sentence that conveys the emotional need for your show. A log line is a little different from your podcast description or summary, because a description tends to go more in depth into the who and the where and the what of your podcast, and it also aids with search engine optimization. A log line, that tends to be a lot snappier to get somebody's attention, and it usually includes the why or the how. Writing a strong logline is an art, so a few tips on writing one. Focus on who is involved with making the show. Get really specific into the description of who these people are and their goal. You can also try to answer the following questions in one sentence. Who is involved? What are they doing? When is it happening? Why is it important? And how will it be addressed? Once you write that logline, you can also start to use it in a couple of different places, like your social media bio. There's a 160-character limit on Twitter, and that is excellent for writing a logline. It's also really beautiful on the back of your podcast business card, and it's a really good subtitle for the homepage of your podcast website. Cool, we've done a lot of writing, so it's time to pat ourselves on the back. We are going to look for a little bit of validation in the form of a listener testimonial. So a listener testimonial provides social proof that other people listen to you and love your show. The best testimonials are from a listener's point of view, and they point out something unique about the show. I find that the best testimonials also come from a listener's point of view and say something about the experience of listening to the show, like how they can't wait for the next episode, how connected they feel to the hosts, or what they're doing while they're listening. Listener testimonials will reinforce everything that you've already said about your podcast, but it specifically connects a current fan with a future listener. Apple Podcasts and Podchaser reviews are a really good place to start looking for those testimonials. You can also source them from social media or use your email inbox. And if you're also pretty early on in making your show, it is perfectly okay to ask for a listener testimonial directly. You can share an early episode with somebody and explain how their writing will help support your show moving forward. Another form of social proof is through receiving some kind of media coverage. The added benefit of press is that hopefully the people in the publication's audience will also find your show through all of their kind words. If you put your press mentions on your podcast website, it also helps new listeners arriving at your site from their article know that they're in the right place. So I'm going to assume that most podcasts are not going to be randomly found for press coverage. You're going to need to advocate for it, and that means you're going to need to reach out to writers with a package of useful things that help you write about the show. A robust podcast website is a form of a press kit, but you might also create a dedicated one that includes more background of the show, high-quality images of the creator, and steps on how to embed an episode of your podcast in their article. And you can put all of that on your podcast website. Once you have that press kit, you're going to identify a couple of people to send the podcast to and then pitch it to some writers. There could be a whole other presentation that I'm not going to go into now about how to get ready for media coverage and making the pitch. So super simple. Do your research into the writers, be respectful of their inboxes, their time, and their tastes, and always keep on pitching. We're gonna get a little creative here. Video trailers. I don't think that they're required, but I've been seeing them a lot more lately. And I think part of it is the fact that new listeners will press play on a video because it's familiar already. And when they do, it connects your voice with a visual, which makes the next step to press play on an episode even more natural. Your video trailer can be super simple. It can just be an audiogram with a static image and your existing podcast trailer audio. But you could also get a little fancier and do either archival footage or behind-the-scenes footage, or you can work with other artists or creators to expand your world with animation or original art. Once you have that video trailer, you can do a couple things with it. So wherever you upload the video, include a description of your podcast, not only because it helps with SEO, but now it's a link that's living out in the wild, which could be somebody's first introduction to your show. So also include the title and that logline you wrote and a link to your podcast website and how to listen as well. So we've done a lot of work to get your podcast website set up for new listeners, and you've made an extra strong case about why they should listen to your podcast, and you've also helped them fall in love and press play on an episode of your show. We are going to turn all of those visitors into subscribers. So on your website, include a dedicated explanation on how to listen to your podcast. And that's not just a link to every single app, though having links to listening apps is also pretty smart. That How to Listen page is going to include step-by-step instructions on how to go from your website to a listening app. So it may have been a little while since you've done this process, but I implore you, please take the time to go through it step by step. because the last thing we want is to lose somebody who got really excited about an episode of your podcast because you already assumed that they know how a listening app works. Podcast creators everywhere will end up thanking you because you just turned a new podcast fan into someone who knows how to listen to podcasts on their phone. Your podcast will just be their first. And that is word of mouth marketing that you can't buy. Somebody's first podcast will forever hold a place in their hearts and headphones. So we have spent a lot of time on websites, but here is actually the big reveal about why podcast websites. We are going to flip the engagement path on its head. So anything that you've thought about as additional supplementary content to continue engaging and deepening your relationship with listeners also serves as an entry point for your podcast from people who arrive because of your writing. And then they deepen their relationship with you by becoming a listener. So, case study from a couple of workers who I know are here. The podcast 70 Million from Lantigua Williams & Co. annotates their transcripts, and they create original reform toolkits for each episode. So now that's 3 possible entry points into one episode of the show. The episode, the annotated transcript, and the reform toolkit, which means that for 10 episodes in one season, there are now 30 entry points into the show just from that one season. I think that's really smart. One more thing on the podcast website front. So measurement in podcasting, okay, cool. Measurement in web is a really big part of how you define web strategy success. Google Analytics is incredibly robust, and when you use it, you can start to understand your visitor and listener activity on your site. So, are people listening to things on my site, and what apps are they using to listen? You can also start to see and measure the different individual elements of your marketing. Did linking to an episode help turn somebody into a listener, or did an article help bring in a new audience? All of these questions and way more are things that you can start to use to explore and answer when you use a podcast website as your hub for all of your web experiments. So, we've talked a lot about websites because they are the foundation of audience growth. Having your website in order is necessary so we can begin working on audience retention. In order to have your audience stick around, you have to have them in the first place. So, a little bit more familiar territory here. Email newsletters. We're gonna get an email newsletter together because it's going to add depth to your podcast and it strengthens a direct connection between you and your audience. Ideally, that newsletter will provide just enough something different from your podcast to add additional insight, and it also will bring your listeners closer to you. I find that email newsletters take on 2 main forms, the regular update and the automated update. So much like consistency in your podcast publishing schedule, consistency in an email newsletter is something to strive for as well. Since these messages are timely to your show, you can time them according to what's happening with your podcast. So repackaging a new episode while you're in season with either an article on your website or a tweet thread, that can also turn into repackaging for your newsletter. And in the off season, you can help keep all of your listeners close to you with a sneak peek into what's happening, so they're extra excited to come back when you have more episodes. And there's also the newsletter-only exclusive, like a special announcement that will keep an audience in the know about all of your big things while rewarding them for your loyalty. Drip campaigns are a form of automated email. Now, I know what you're thinking, automated emails, I'm not a robot, my listeners are not robots, don't fear. So I actually find that these are really great because they meet a listener where they are, when something might be relevant to them. A bonus thing about this is that an automated message is something you set up once, and they continue to send and engage with your fans regardless of when they happen to join you. Another benefit of these messages is that because they're timely for your recipients, they seem to have much higher engagement rates than regular messages. I am an avid newsletter subscriber, so I'm always looking for examples of these campaigns. So if you're doing this, please let me know. I love seeing all of these in action. So a couple ways you can use this already. If you have something exclusive and special to share with your fans, use it as an automated welcome message. I once got a secret audio file as a welcome, which was super duper cool. I also received a thrilling message about 3 months ago. Did you know you've been subscribed to my newsletter for 3 months? Thank you for being here. And they did a really smart thing, which was they included a short description of the host's favorite episode, and then they pointed me to their website to start listening. I loved the behind-the-scenes anecdotes they provided, and I also now had a perfect gateway episode to introduce this podcast to new people. You can also use the anniversary of your podcast or an anniversary of someone subscribing as a cause for an automated celebration. So use it to encourage your listeners to respond with stories of how they found your show, or you can ask them to share their favorite episodes with you as well. Since I'm all about the efficient processes, I've broken down the pieces of a good newsletter here. Subject line, header image, a greeting, the message itself, the closing, and the short signature. Every time you plan a newsletter, you'll be starting from this template that you have made just for your podcast. You can also start to get a little more elaborate with the contents, like mimicking the segments of your podcast in your newsletter. So you could include an ad break to mention a show's sponsor or a podcast cross-promotion, and you can also close out a message with credits and thanks, much like you would at the end of an episode. Email subscriptions can also feel kind of elusive the same way that podcast subscriptions do, so 2 quick tips. My first tip is to use your podcast website as a place to direct people to sign up for the newsletter, and you can also mention it with a link in your episode notes as well. For new visitors, a newsletter might be that super low-key action that they need to start a relationship with you. And for your existing listeners, a newsletter gives them another way to love you beyond your audio. And my second tip is to make a newsletter worth reading. So think about what a newsletter reader really needs, and imagine what's going to make that fan click on a message from you immediately when they receive it. So also, read more newsletters, especially podcast newsletters. I highly recommend Death, Sex, and Money because they are yet another dimension of their show. I find it has the same warmth and closeness of every episode while also reminding me to either listen or extending the goodness of the episode that I already heard. Super nerdy secret here, I love email newsletter software. It is incredibly useful. So not only does it help you manage your email list and make those really lovely email templates and set up those automated drip campaigns, it is also very robust in its measurement as well. Data from your email newsletter can help you get a sense of what subject lines are doing well, what percentage of your emails are opened, and what links readers are clicking on. And when you use your podcast website links in your newsletter, you can also start to take actions and what your readers are doing through your podcast website analytics as well. And all of those little data points, they are extremely helpful when it comes to strategically tying a newsletter and the rest of the web. If there's a subject line that did really well with a high open rate, that can inform a social media post. And audience interaction rates are yet another set of numbers you can provide to a sponsor. So, before we close out, social media time. I'm not going to talk about regular social media postings because I find that that's something that a solid editorial calendar and commitment will help you maintain. Regular posts also tend to be a little bit more about the existing audiences than the new audiences. So instead, we're going to discuss a social media campaign. A campaign is focused, targeted, and coordinated, and it's got a goal. So with a little bit of money and good framing, a campaign can easily turn into an audience retention and growth strategy. Some of the big picture questions to ask yourself: what's special right now and why? How long will this campaign run? What is our budget and how will we spend it? Who should know about this and where are they located? How will we know that this campaign is successful? All of these questions help you figure out the parameters before you start to figure out a game plan. A campaign's limited time span and focus also helps you with goal setting and measurement. So we're going to use what's called a SMART goal, a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound goal. I also like to make my SMART goals smarter by adding in evaluation and revision, because if everything's an experiment, you're constantly learning from what you're doing all the time. By looking at your results and revising for next time, you will hopefully improve with every new audience development experiment. I find that writing out a sentence about a campaign can also help us keep our eyes on the prize. So, for example, in setting this goal, I would like to double the number of people who are subscribed to my podcast from 250 to 500 in the 10 weeks between the start of season 2 and the end of season 2. You can also go a little deeper and say why this is an important goal to have as well. So, doubling my subscribers will help me make a case to my advertisers that I have a strong listener following so I can ask for a higher CPM moving into season 3. Lastly, paint in very broad strokes how you might achieve this goal as a very loose framework. So I will ask my email subscribers to share an episode with 3 friends on social media and tag the show, and I will also guest on 3 aligned podcasts with active fan communities on social media. Those 3 sentences are a template for your day-to-day and week-by-week plans for a social media campaign. And luckily, social media dashboards provide some analytics data, especially if you're running a paid campaign. I highly, highly, highly recommend sending people, surprise, to their podcast website during the campaign as well, because you'll have even more robust analytics about what people are doing once they arrive there. So, audience development, it is ongoing and it is a process. And I do believe that setting up your podcast right on the internet means that you will continue to grow. With each and every new episode you put out, with every newsletter you send, and with every social media campaign you develop and execute. All those in-depth insights come from intentionally creating those building blocks and connecting the dots between your podcast and the rest of the web. So, your next steps. As I said, you got homework now. You're going to polish up your podcast website for all of your new listeners. And if you need a website, RadioPublic, I am very happy to help. Everything I shared here today has a companion strategy guide with lots and lots of examples, and all of those can be found at bit.ly/agreatpodcast website. All of that is in lowercase. RadioPublic also has a podcasters hub, which has lots of resources for improving and growing your show, including a free podcast marketing course at podcasters.radiopublic.com. All you need, podcast RSS feed to sign up. And we and I are regularly writing a podcast web strategy at about.radiopublic.com. And if there's anything you're thinking about related to podcasts and the web, we are actually thinking about them too. So, guess what, guys? I'm going to celebrate every success you have. Please get in touch with me on Twitter and via email. I can't wait to celebrate all of the ways in which you are going to creatively connect podcasts and the rest of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayan, for all the help. All right, we're going to do some work to get back on schedule, but I just wanted to say really briefly a thank you at this point. As you may know, over the past 5 years, Werk has helped match 500 people with mentors. And that isn't done by an algorithm. There is no like mentorship bot or Black's box. That's done by Yaseman Khorsandi, who you may have met when you came in. So give her a high five on your way out at the end of the evening. She's done all that work this year. So I don't know if she can even hear us from the lobby, but can we go, whoa? That was perfect, Merck, thank you. One. Okay, when you do find yourself in a relationship with a mentor, we'd like to talk a little bit about how best to make use of that relationship, to really glean all of the value that you can. And so here to talk about that, we have Anjali Sastry. She's the associate producer of NPR It's Been a Minute with Sam Sanders. She is also the founder of NPR's Women of Color Mentorship Program. Please help me welcome her to stage.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Welcome to Mentorship and Me. So I'm going to start this presentation the way I started my 8th grade graduation speech. Are we having fun yet at Werk It? Hello? Yeah. That was definitely better reception than my 8th grade crowd. So thank you. I appreciate that. So my name is Anjali Sastry, and I am a producer on It's Been a Minute with Sam Sanders. It's a twice-weekly podcast and weekend radio show about focusing on news and culture and conversations with people of the moment. And on the day-to-day job, I'm recording interviews, cutting tape, booking guests, writing scripts, planning breaking news and long-term coverage. Also recording the voices of plants sometimes. That's actually me on assignment in Mexico, field producing a story involving a produce company there. But today I'm going to talk about something that's really important to me, mentorship. So I recently co-founded a Women of Color mentorship program at NPR, and today you're going to learn some best practices for being a mentor or a mentee wherever you're in your career through tips and a couple anecdotes. And also more on starting a program if you want to do that in your organization. Sometimes mentorship is really important to actually getting a job, but it's something that we don't really talk about, and it's very simple, so that's why I wanted to share some best practices with you today. If you'd like, you can tweet at me during the presentation. I'm going to be honest, I'm not great at Twitter, but feel free to reach out, and I'll get at you after the presentation. So a little bit on how this program got started. I don't think it's any secret that a lot of the newsrooms around this country are white and male, and I don't think that's just anecdotal. A Pew Research Center study recently found that newsroom employees are more likely to be white and male than all US workers. And so we saw that in our newsroom, and that sort of inspired us to found a program or start a program around mentorship, because there's a lot of informal mentorship that often takes place between the same kinds of people. And we kept hearing that, and we decided to take back that space and create a formal mentorship program for women of color in our organization. These are people who often need mentorship, but are afraid to ask, and they don't often see themselves in leadership positions and see people who look like them. Like other news organizations, NPR has struggled to retain people of color. So we thought, what if women of color could talk about why they couldn't stay in these organizations? What if they could talk about microaggressions they were dealing with on a day-to-day basis? I mean, I've been there. I've been confused for another brown person in the newsroom. That's happened a number of times. What about work-life balance? What about being the only person who looks like you on a team? So we wanted to take that space back and create a safe space for community, connection, and also joy and uplift that didn't already exist at NPR. And as a lot of people have told me, mentoring women of color is necessary to diversify the newsroom, and that really matters. So a little bit about how we did this, but first I want to shout out my co-founders who couldn't be here today. From the right to the left, obviously that's me. That's Mallory Yu, an editor on All Things Considered, NPR's flagship news magazine show. Christina Kalla, a producer on All Things Considered, and Kat Chow, a former reporter on Code Switch. What we were doing was really hard because it didn't already exist at NPR. We were working from scratch. There were a lot of weekends and late nights, volunteer time, pairing up mentors and mentees, and sort of figuring out what people really wanted. I want to shout out the Online News Association's Mentorship Collaborative. They actually trained us and other journalists to start mentorship programs in newsrooms nationwide. So this is something you can apply to if you're interested in it. I would encourage you to Google it. But we got a $5,000 grant from the Online News Association and also training on how to then, in turn, train mentors and mentees on how to be better within our program. So this money kicked off the program, and it actually gave us courage to ask for funding from NPR leadership. And so also ask for long-term institutionalized support. Also, there were other resources that I need to shout out inside NPR, including the Senior VP for Diversity, Keith Woods. There was a company-wide general mentorship program happening at the same time, coincidentally, so we continue to collaborate on events. And also buy-in from senior leadership, which it took a while, and we fought for all these things, and also to be seen and to be heard. It really wasn't easy. So I will tell you a little bit about the structure of the program really quick. The program breaks down with one-on-one pairs or two-on-one pairs who meet formally for 4 to 6 months. And they have the option to continue informally after that. There are 100 women of color within the program that we've served so far within 2 cohorts. And they're, just for context and reference, there's about 1,000 people or more than 1,000 people who work at NPR right now. And these women come from all across departments at NPR: news, administration, operations, IT, so it's not just podcasting or journalism. So that's another thing, is it's really brought people together from different parts of the organization. Also, pairs meet monthly via video or phone. Like I myself, I'm bi-coastal, I'm based in LA, so my mentors are often in other places, but also in person, of course. We have monthly brown bags. So some of that funding that I mentioned earlier, it goes toward putting on these brown bags with industry experts. We have a biannual speaker symposium, and we also fund conference scholarships for women of color who may not have ever been to a conference in the entirety of their career. So that's a little bit about the program. I'd like to know more about you. So, show of hands, how many of you, your boss has come up to you at the end of the day, you're about to leave, but he or she or they are like, there's a project for you right now, but you don't know who to ask, or you didn't have anyone in mind to ask. Raise your hands. Have you ever been in that position? Okay, I see a couple of you. Have you ever wanted to make the career leap to a different industry? Anyone? Anyone in the audience? Okay. Okay, do you remember your first day on the job and you were asked to shadow someone informally to figure out the job? I mean, I was there, for sure. Andrea's shoe. She was mine. Did anyone else have someone they shadowed on the first day on the job? Okay, thank you. You probably saw this coming, but you've already been a mentee. Whether it was informally or formally, you've been there. So I want to share a story with you.
My name is Christina Kalla, and having a mentor, or another way of saying it, being a mentee, has really helped me with my confidence and with getting a sense of what it is that I want to do next. The other way being a mentee has been really rewarding is just in getting ideas for different things to ask for or different opportunities to try, whether it is something like a reporting trip or something like grabbing coffee with a reporter or another producer whose work I really admire.
So that all probably seems really simple, and you're like, wait, Christina co-founded this program, like why is she a mentee? But we really felt that it was important to put ourselves in the program, and it didn't matter really what stage you might be in, that you would still need a mentor. And she has her own mentors, just like I do, who gave her the confidence to get feedback and also achieve her goals. So before talking about how to be a good mentee, what about finding a mentor? So I'm gonna give you some homework. I know it says that you should tell the person sitting next to you, but I'm gonna give you some homework while you're at Werk It. I know some of you are in the Werk It mentorship program, and I'd encourage you to share a short-term 3-month professional goal, like in the next 3 months, something you wanna accomplish. Short-term professional goal with your mentor who might be in the Werk It program with you. If you don't have a mentor today, if there's someone else in your life that you trust, that you want to share this goal with, I really encourage you to. I think the speaker before me went over SMART goals. This is also a tip sheet that we sent out to you all beforehand in your welcome email. So use those to develop some of the goals that will help you keep what you want out of your mentorship on track. That will really help you. So next, part of choosing a mentor, you really have to think about who you want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. If you want to keep it simple and stick with short term, go ahead and do that. Are there specific people you look up to? Make a list and keep track of it. Is there a particular position that you want to be in? Take note of that right now. Sometimes we tend to think about these things like informally, maybe you're driving, sitting in traffic. I know I've been there and I've had these conversations with myself, but really write it down so that you can sort of become intentional about that. Maybe you want to consider an identity-based mentor. Think about what's right for you. The other huge part of this is making the ask, which is really daunting. I could do a whole presentation about this. There are a lot of resources in those tip sheets that I mentioned earlier that we sent out. I'll just go over a couple things. Think about if someone like a boss in your network or someone else within the networking that you do today could put you in touch with that person that you want to be your mentor. If you're cold emailing, I know I've been there, I've gotten a ton of cold emails, show you've done the work. Like what specifically about that mentor, a prospective mentor's work, have you done research on that would make them know that you're willing to invest the time in, because you invested the time in them. Also, don't ask right away, because there's a reason informational interviews exist. It's to feel each other out. So reach out to them, ask for that informational interview, but when you're doing it, mention the goals that I just talked about and how the specific expertise of that person can help you, and use examples. There's really so much more to say. I could go on, but I'm limited. So please refer to those tip sheets or email or tweet at me. The other thing I want to make is the distinction between a mentor versus a sponsor. So a mentor gives advice, but doesn't get you that job or raise or promotion. A sponsor does that. So it could be a boss, a sponsor could be a boss, a recruiter, or even an employer in a new industry, but don't expect your mentors to be sponsors or to get you that job. But mentors can put you in touch with those people, with those sponsors. So, some best practices on being a mentee. So, goals, 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 goals. This is literally what I harp all the time. But goals matter to what you'll be accomplishing in your time together. So really use those SMART Goals tip sheet, the SMART Goals tip sheet that we passed out. That'll really help you. In terms of meetings, I would recommend monthly meetings in person or via video especially if you're meeting for the first time and aren't based in the same place, and phone only once you're comfortable, but that should be something that you agree on ahead of time. I just love agendas, and this can be as formal and comprehensive as you want it to be. It could be an email where you just tell your mentor what you want to talk about ahead of time. It can be 2 points. It can be a piece you want to read together. It just helps you be intentional, and then it also helps your mentor prep and figure out what you need and how they can help you. This is also a no-brainer, but it helps you keep on track, asking specific questions about your work and stay on time. So this one's really funny because I was gonna open the bullet point by saying constructive criticism is really hard to hear, but you need to go to your meetings with an open mind and be okay with hearing hard things, but also take a compliment. You guys are doing hard work. You're trying to make it in an industry, and it's not easy, and so if someone's gonna give you a compliment, take it. I know I was raised on compliments aren't real, and my parents were like, be dubious, because the people don't really mean it. But they mean it, you deserve to be here, take that compliment. And that's something actually my mentee from the Werk program mentioned to me during lunch, so I thought I'd bring that up with you guys. Respect your mentor's time, don't go over. I think that's also pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes we forget that. Take notes so that they don't have to, so that you can follow up. I think following up is just so important so that they don't forget you, because they probably have a busy life, for work and personally. If my mentor is really busy, I usually send a follow-up with notes after the session. And the final thing I'd say about being a good mentee is it's not a therapy session, there are boundaries, but we're human. That's a part of life. You're gonna be dealing with handling your personal work-life balance. It's just gonna come up. And recently, I'll share another story. My mentor opened up the top of our session with some personal stuff, and she apologized. She was literally like, this isn't therapy, but I really need to talk about this. But it put me at ease, so for next time, I'll be okay to vent too, but just don't monopolize, or try not to monopolize the session with that stuff, and be on the same page if your mentor is okay talking personal stuff from the start. Okay. Back to you. So, how many of you have been sent a resume to edit or for a position in your organization? A cover letter? Anything like that? Okay, a couple of you. Did you ever tell someone to take a self-care day? Yeah, on someone's first day on the job, did you show someone the ropes? Were you the person that was shadowed? Yeah, cool. Okay, so there are quite a number of hands in this room. You have done it. You have been a mentor. Thank you for mentoring. You might have done it informally or formally, but again, you've done it. So I want to share another story.
Mentoring doesn't always mean that the person that you're mentoring will end up helping to run the company. I mean, that's a nice thing if it works. Maybe what happens is your person realizes, this is interesting, but it's not my dream. And I really want to follow my dream. Can you help me do that? And so you may mentor your mentee right out of an NPR job, but that's okay, because people should be allowed to go do what they think they're best at, where they want to do it.
So that's right, Karen's getting real here. So people leave jobs. It's a part of life. That's not breaking news. And I think mentors can help with that. Just be really upfront if that's what you want, and they'll tell you whether they're the right person to help. And shout out to Karen, who mentored in our program recently, and she's been an informal mentor of mine. I think she might be in the audience today, so thank you, Karen. I really appreciate you. So, being a good mentor. I think a lot of this will be a refresher, but I'm always about being intentional about some of the best practices, so I'll just go over it with some of you. Mentors, you're busy, so you have the power to set the meetings. What works for you? Put it on the calendar, share it with the mentee. Make time to prep and go over those agendas before the meetings. I think that's really important, instead of scrambling right before. If you set some time earlier in the week, maybe put that on your calendar too. Again, I'm really type A, so that's just the kind of thing I do. But if you need to put it on the calendar, go ahead and do that so you can prep for the meeting. You're allowed to give homework. One of my mentors, I wanted to ask for a raise last year, and she encouraged me after talking about it in our session. That was one of my goals. It was my short-term goal, and she encouraged me to do the market research about the number that I should ask for. She also told me that I should write an essay listing out the reasons why I deserve that promotion, and she edited that essay over the course of the several months that we were meeting, or it was a couple months. And I actually submitted that essay to my boss with her help, and I got that raise. So I have her to thank for that. So homework matters. Don't reschedule. The meetings are on the calendar for a reason. Like, you're gonna fall behind and set a bad precedent, so try not to reschedule. I think this is something we do a lot. We do a lot of informal, like helping and shadowing, or letting people shadow, and also giving advice in free time. I think you should be open with your supervisor if you're doing something like this, especially if it's going to be on work time, and also because it's something to be really proud of, because you are giving back. It's okay not to know all the answers. Like, be honest with what you can provide and can't. Like, feel free to point them to another person if that's the case. I've definitely been there, and I've been very clear with mentees about that. Again, sponsorship, you can point them to another sponsor, but you don't have to be that sponsor, so don't feel that pressure. It's 2019, I just told you to tweet at me during this presentation, but during mentorship meetings, try to avoid that Slack, the email, put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Finally, agree on an action plan to follow up. It's just so important to do that. I'll leave you with a couple final things. Mutual mentorships exist. There are a number within our program. One example was a reporter in the program and a corporate sponsorship employee who were in lateral roles, and they actually learned about each other's jobs and different skill sets, and also to see things from a different point of view in the organization, and they sort of shadowed each other. Also, imposter syndrome, that's also real. I've been there, but take note, I saw a lot of you raising hands in the audience about some of the informal mentorship that you might have been doing. You probably have already been asked to step up in ways that you didn't really expect. And you can be a mentor and a mentee at the same time, no matter what part of your career you're in, and I just keep saying that because you should take hold of what you've learned from past mentors and pay it forward. When you finish up formally, you can keep the mentorship going informally, but figure out if that's what you both want. Like, I have a board of director mentors, which is basically like people I don't meet with formally once a month, but I'll call if I'm going through a situation, and there's like 4 to 5 people on my board of director mentors. But also, mentorships end. Like, not all mentorships work out. That's also part of life. I think you can say that and be honest. Maybe it's something that they're feeling too. I'm a very extroverted, introvert personality, and I think I haven't necessarily matched up with someone, like I have been matched up with mentors that didn't really work out, and I've been honest with them about that, or they've been honest with me, and we still have a relationship, but it just didn't work as a mentor-mentee relationship. Which brings me to my final point, that we all have limits. You need to take care of yourself, hashtag self-care. That's also really self-explanatory, but maybe it means taking a break from being a mentor or mentee for a while, only during mentoring or menteeing sessions during work hours, taking a personal day, delegating tasks, talking about professional stuff during sessions only. You just have to set the tone from the start. It's all for you. I'm happy to be a resource. If you're looking to start your own formal mentorship program, feel free to reach out to me. Shout out to the Werk mentorship program. I hope you found some of these tips useful to be able to use. Refer to those tip sheets I mentioned. Also, I couldn't cover everything here, so feel free to reach out to talk more. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjali. That was awesome. I really dig this idea of like an expanded understanding of what mentorship is, you know, even maybe before you know to use that word in a professional setting. I think in my case, it was probably sitting in a parked car. It was a festiva in the parking lot of an old country buffet, and I was learning how to rap, but I was really nervous, and I was sitting in a car with a guy who was really good at it, and he agreed to stand outside and like bang out a lunch table beat on the roof of the car so I could practice. So shout out to my mentor, Steph. All right, we are now going to be talking about the freelance life. This one is very, very close to home, as you might imagine. I bet a lot of us in the creative field have lived this, this kind of professional existence that I think does take some time to acclimate to understand how to operate comfortably, confidently within an environment that isn't always full of certainty. In my universe as a musician, in the best of all possible worlds, you are hired and fired within 90 minutes, maybe 95 minutes if you get an encore at the end of the set. So now I'm going to ask you to help me welcome in a moment Juleka Lantigua Williams. She is the founder and the CEO of Lantigua Williams & Co. She's worked in media for 18 years. Most of those years have been freelance, which means like her freelance career is old enough to vote and buy cigarettes. So I'm gonna now ask that you put your hands together to welcome Juleka to the stage with us.
Hello, Los Angeles. Hi, everybody. Thank you for skipping your 3 p.m. coffee to be with me. I will try and make this entertaining. As a lot of you know already, I'm pretty transparent. So I started with a wet lunch, topped it off with a cappuccino. We'll see, they're duking it out for my brain cells right now. This is by far my favorite thing to do every year. This is the unmissable conference. And so I get to see all the women who make my life wonderful and possible, and I get to pick up a few more along the way, always without fail. So please, if we haven't met, let's make sure that we hug it out. I'm a hugger. So catch me. I might go and change, because this is like 5 degrees too dressy for me, but you will recognize me by the hair. Let's start with some honesty. All of the so-called mistakes that I'm gonna talk to you about, I've made them, as our very gracious host said. My career is old enough to vote and buy cigarettes. And so I have made every single one of these mistakes. I have learned from them. But I've also managed scores of freelancers. And so I've been on both sides of the table. And so I feel pretty good about some of the advice that I'm going to share with you. It's not a rule book. It's just things to consider to apply as they fit the way that you want to do your business. So NPR, The Atlantic, Random House, a bunch of formal professional experiences, and then the biggest and most consequential one was founding my company. At the height of our production this year, I had about 40 freelancers working across 5 of our shows, and I am the only person that anyone reports to at my company. That's the way that I've structured it. Everyone goes into a team understanding that they own 25% of the production, and so no one has to report to anyone. And so that's been really part of the key to the success, that everyone knows and understands how vital they are to not just the production, but the quality of our shows. Yeah, so all of these. All right, so the top 10, the 10th mistake that, in my experience, is that what Anjali said is absolutely right. You have to have a formal sponsor. And she explained what it is. A mentor is someone you talk to for advice. A sponsor is someone whose interactions with you end up with you being paid. Okay, that's the key difference. This is the person who can help you get a promotion. They can help you get into another job. They can help you get into a full-time job. They can sign you up or align you with freelance opportunities. The sponsor understands that their role is to help you get paid. I am both a mentor and a sponsor, and I am very clear when I enter into these relationships what the person expects from me and what I can deliver for that person. Right? So I cannot say to someone, come, I will sponsor you, and then in a year, I will bring you on full time. I'm not there yet. In a couple of years, I might be. But I can say to someone, I will be your mentor, and when you're ready to make a move, I will help you by connecting you with people who might interview you for a job. So when you seek someone out, and you have to seek these people out, no one volunteers to be a mentor, right? Because that's a little bit intrusive. So if you want someone to be your mentor, you have to formally ask them. And like Anjali said, you have to manage that relationship. But the other part of this is something that a lot of women don't do, which is they don't mentor. Especially the younger women who are in their mid-20s and even into their early 30s, they think that they don't have enough experience to mentor. That's not true. If you are 1 year into your professional career after college, you now know enough to mentor someone younger. So the other part of the circle of life with mentorship is that if you're not mentoring anyone, please find someone to mentor. It makes all the difference to that person, but it also makes a big difference to you. Because what happens is, as you are helping them deal with their obstacles and challenges and growth areas, you learn about yourself and your tolerances, and whether you're risk adverse or whether you are ready to take on more risk. This is why I have never, in 18 years, not mentored. Because I learn in the process as much about myself as I do helping the person discover what they want and what they care about. So how do we fix this? Talk to people who have sponsors. I definitely have sponsors. They're called my advisory board. My company has an advisory board of 6 members, and I have brilliant people like Martina Castro on that board, and they understand that they're on my board both to advise me, but to put me in front of opportunities that could turn into tangible businesses that end with a check, right? So I have very much formalized my sponsorship relationships by having an advisory board. So you should, after you leave today or during the course of the festival, you should identify 3 accessible potential sponsors at work, in your industry or in a complementary field. So there are a lot of you here who are interested in podcasting, but are in talent management or in traditional print journalism or in television, right? So this is your opportunity. Look at the list of attendees. Look at the list of speakers. Make sure you get 5 minutes with that person and say, can I follow up with you and have a conversation about mentoring and sponsorship, right? It is really important for you to walk out of here holding hands, metaphorically, with someone who could potentially be a bridge if you want to get into podcasting from a different career. Formally asked to be sponsored. Also, there are quite a few women-friendly or women-oriented established mentoring programs. So the International Women's International Women's Media Foundation, they have the same acronym, has a formal mentoring program that lasts about a year. I'm a mentor in that program. Air Media has a mentoring program, and there are people who are participating during the conference on that. There's the Spotify Bootcamp, and then Third Coast also has a residency. So there are lots of mentoring programs where you can apply. And if you don't get in the first year, apply again. And if you don't get in the second year, apply again, right? Because they're very competitive, because they are really cradles of creativity and support, especially for women in digital media. ONA, right now, the Online News Association has open applications for the Women Leadership Accelerator. I'm also a product of that. The deadline is the 31st. Come and talk to me about that one. It's very intensive. They get 450 applications for 25 spots, but it will change your life. Literally, it will change your life that week and then the year that you spend under the tutelage of the organization. All right, last thing about mentorship, you have to manage the logistics. You set up the meeting, you don't miss the meeting. You come in with an agenda, you send the agenda at least a day before the conversation, and then you, at the bottom, say, these are the things I need from you during the conversation. Really, really important for you to understand what you need to get from your mentor and your sponsor. The 9th biggest mistake that we make is we don't raise our hands enough, right? And that's because we're used to being compartmentalized as freelancers. So you get hired to mix, you get hired to do field recordings, you get hired to help with scripting, and you feel like you need to stay in that lane. Not true. As someone who works with dozens of freelancers, the best thing that you can do is tell me at the beginning, hey, I know that you're hiring me to do field work, but I'm really interested in editing. So if you have a small assignment, like a trailer, I would love to work on editing the trailer for you guys. Let me know I'm available. I love it when people do that, because then I say to myself, and I say to my editor and my mixer, hey guys, so-and-so, who I know is gonna be doing this, really wants to grow in editing. Let's find opportunities for her, okay? This happens over and over and over. I'm starting to realize that because I do that, a lot of the freelancers that I work with end up getting full-time jobs because they end up developing a bunch of complementary skills to whatever their core competencies are. So now I gotta rethink that strategy. So raise your hand. When you come into any assignment, look around at who's on your team, look around at what the product is going to be, and formally ask to be included in an area of growth that's important to you. You have to ask. No one's gonna guess. No one's gonna ask you to do more, right? Because now we're very aware of the fact that we can't overtax, especially women and women of color. But if you come in with the intention of growing through the process instead of just contributing your 15% of the project, you will go through it. And then someone like me, who is then putting teams together for other projects, is gonna remember, oh, she wants to grow through this, so maybe put her in this team for this other project where she can really thrive in that area. So sometimes we don't raise our hand because we don't think that we have the skills. So I have a fix for that. And this is not just in professional life. This applies really well in my life because I have high anxiety sometimes in some relationships, and I'm always feeling paranoid. So I've learned to ask myself in my head, where's the evidence, right? Where's the evidence that I'm not making a good impression? Where's the evidence that my work is not good enough? Where's the evidence that I won't be able to produce that show? Where's the evidence that she doesn't like me? Constantly looking for data, right, for my interactions. So when you're feeling like you can't raise your hand, ask yourself, where's the evidence that she's gonna say no? Where's the evidence that I can't do it? Where's the evidence that I don't have the competencies to actually get this done? All right, so once you're on a team to work on something as a freelancer, offer to support one particular person, right, in the task that you want to grow into, right? So if you are a mixer who really wants to learn about engineering, sound engineering, right? Then align yourself with the engineer. First, ask to shadow, then ask to help, right? Ask for practice materials. Ask them to give you a 2-minute sample to clean up and then have them listen to it and give you pointers on how you did on that. People love sharing their knowledge. And if you ask in a time where it's not deadline, it's not a time crunch, it doesn't impose on them, they are more than likely to say yes and to help you grow in that process. The other thing you can do is offer to do a draft. So I typically hire an editor, an associate producer, full producer, mixer, and then some other people. I typically have a conversation with our associate producers who are coming on the projects, and I say, anytime we're asking for volunteers, I want you to raise your hand because I will figure out how to pay you because I see that you are volunteering to do something that is going to push your growth. So if I have an opportunity to pay someone who's already on the team to do something that pushes their growth and their professional boundaries, I do it. But if they don't step up and raise their hand, how am I supposed to know? So you have to do that continually. All right. The last one is do some additional research and work to bring new ideas and methods to the team without being asked, right? This does not mean think about how to restructure the entire show and the entire season. That's not what that means. Start small. Think about what a teaser might sound like. You know, a 20-second, 30-second teaser for a show. Do the teaser if you're a mixer, if you're a producer, and show it to the team and see and get feedback on that, right? So sometimes these small pieces of initiative really go a long way to showcase your talents and also to give you a way to get feedback from people in a way that is not gonna cost you the job, right? All right, so the 8th biggest mistake that we make is not checking in regularly, right? You have a lot on your plate, you're juggling a lot of clients, you're not sure how to prioritize, you know, checking in with someone, you're not sure that it's not gonna be imposing on someone. You procrastinate, like me, I'm definitely an 11th hour kind of person. So you wait until the last minute, you get done when you need to get done, but then that leaves you no room to have an actual conversation about what you've made. You've overcommitted, right? But you've underdelivered. That's usually what happens. So when you are on a team, figure out who the editor is. Well, you'll know very quickly, or who the EP is. and say to them, hey, is it okay for me to set up a monthly 20-minute conversations with you just so that you and I can talk about how I'm doing with my work, right? So do that with the editor, do that with whomever the lead person is for that team. And when you have that 20-minute conversation set on the calendar, and it should be, if the project is 6 months, then do it 6 times. If the project is 3 months, then do it maybe 4 times. Figure out what the best intervals are. You want to do that because you don't want feedback at the end of the project, where the person's going to say, well, actually, we need to talk about your time management. Actually, you didn't follow the spec sheet every single time. We had to go back and make changes. Actually, you don't want that at the very end, right? Because by that time, those people have decided that they're not going to work with you again. So you want to ask for feedback consistently throughout the project. Those exchanges are also an opportunity for you to say, I want to level up. I want to raise my degree of difficulty with the work that I'm doing for you. How can I do that? Or here's a way that I'm thinking I can do that, right? Because you're also trying to set yourself up for bigger roles with these folks or with other folks. All right, so make the calendar. Prepare a quick little 3 bullet point agenda to talk to the person about. Set your growth goals. This is really important. And I set growth goals for all of my mentees basically on a quarterly basis. So every 3 months, we look at our growth goals and we see how far we've gotten into them. The 7th, this was an easy one to fix, not digitizing transactions. Last year, I sent an email to everyone who freelances for me. I will no longer take PDF invoices. You have to send me an email. I just don't anymore. It's too much. You have to send me an email from a third-party provider, right, that has good encryption, because I don't want to be responsible for having your bank information. I have insurance, but I don't have like encryption level insurance, so I don't want to put your information at risk. There are lots of other places that are far more secure. Now, all of my freelancers send me an invoice that says, pay invoice. I click on the button and I pay the invoice, sometimes within the hour, because you want to not be burdensome. So digitize everything. Please make sure you know how to do a W-9 that's not handwritten, so that you need to update your W-9 every calendar year. Please make sure that if you move, you send that information to everyone you've worked for, because otherwise, in January, when I'm doing 1099s, it's a nightmare. 10% of my 1099s get returned because you guys have moved. So now, I've had my accountant switch. We don't send paper 1099s anymore. They all go on email, right? Because again, I'm a one-woman company right now with a ton of people who are working with me. So the less time that I spend doing administrative stuff, the better. And if you're one of those people who makes my life easy, I remember that. I have a smile when I go pay you. And I'm like, I gotta put that person on another project, because look at how easy my life is with her, right? Have an invoice template that is professional. Your name, your address, right? Give me directions. Payment due, it's almost always net 30. Read your contracts, we're gonna get to that. Put the date on when it's due. Put the address where you want me to send it. If you want me to pay you in a different way, then tell me that. But most of the time, when you send your invoices electronically, all of that information will be there. Save your W-9 as a PDF, always. This is really important. So you are not up on rates and you don't have a rate card. Big problem. A rate card is basically a list of your prices, right? And you should have multiple types of prices for multiple types of skills, for multiple types and size of projects, right? So you should not just be like, well, my rate is $45 an hour. That's a dead end in negotiation, right? You have to have a rate, especially if you're someone who does multi-things. You have to have a rate for editing. You have to have a rate for mixing. You have to have a rate for field production. You have to have a rate for scripting, for host coaching. You have to have a rate for all kinds of things, right? Because then you come to the table prepared to negotiate based on what the potential client has the ability to pay you. So Werker did something great last year. They did that survey, and I have it on a tab almost always, because that's where I go to refer to when I'm negotiating with people, to make sure that I'm being fair to them and to make sure that the work that I'm asking them to do is commensurate with the industry standard. Air Media also has a great directory on rates and standard practices based on payment. So that's another resource that I use. You should know those web addresses by heart. You should reference those. You should apply some of those. Don't limit yourself to having one rate that is across everything you do. You're definitely pigeonholing yourself if you do that. Fifth biggest mistake that we make is we come into an assignment not really knowing the client's work. And I don't mean the frequency of the show, the name of the show, and having listened to the last 5 podcasts. That's not what I mean. I mean really looking at their entire portfolio and looking at what themes are present throughout the work. I mean, I've had people pitch me shows about, professional gamblers. And I'm just like, really? Professional gamblers? What in the repertoire of work that I've done clued you into the fact that you could even come to me and talk to me about professional gamblers? There's nothing there, right? And so really, really understand the work that people are doing, and make sure that you're up to date, obviously, on the latest 5 episodes, or at least the last season. That would be really good. If you're sending a blank query, you have to talk specifically about what role you'd like to play. That's really, really important. And then, we don't set fees appropriately, which goes back to not having a rate card. So browse the client's social media for the last month at least, identify the specific role that you'd like to play, and then match your skills based on the experience that you have to what they've been doing. Okay, this is a really big one. Not taking time management seriously. Some of us are missing deadlines. Some of us under-deliver on the work. By this, I mean sending things in that haven't been fact-checked, sending things in that aren't formatted properly, sending things in that have misspellings of common things, right? These are all big, big no-nos. Or sending tape in with instructions that say, okay, so I left a full 50 seconds in at this and this time because I know that that's where we're gonna put this ad. When you already have the ad. That is not a good show. That's not a good showing. So how do you fix this? Do not take on more work than you can handle. I know that's a difficult one because we're all hustling. So what you've got to do is figure out which days of the week you're going to dedicate to each project. So instead of just being like, I'm in the mood to work on project B today, so I'm going to spend my morning working on this one because that's what I'm feeling like. And then eventually I'll get to projects F and H. Don't do that. That is really going to spell trouble for you. So what you want to do is think about your week in quadrants and think about, okay, so for the first day and a half, every week I'm going to do this project because I know that it's due on Wednesday. And then the thing that's due on Friday, I'm going to work on from Wednesday afternoon to Thursday midday. And then the thing that's due the following Monday, I'm going to work on from Thursday afternoon to Friday. And somewhere in there, obviously put personal time to walk, to go take a walk, take your dog out, whatever you need to do to keep your sanity. I cannot overemphasize that. Also, at my company, we have a universal deadline. It's noon Eastern Standard Time. So when on the production calendar, you see a date, whatever it is that you're supposed to deliver on that day, it's due at noon p.m. ET. And I did that, I learned that the hard way, because during season 1 of 70 Million, we would have a deadline, and so people would get things in at 9 a.m., others would get it in at 11 p.m., others would get it in at 3 in the morning, right? Not gonna work when other people are waiting for you to deliver something that they have to work on. So set your own universal deadline. It can be noon wherever you are, but you set it for yourself so that your work always comes in on time or early. Ask for help early, not after. If you are 3 days away from a deadline and you're starting to stress about it, that's when you ask for help, not after you've missed it. Okay, so the minute that you start feeling like the tingly feeling about, oh my God, I'm really not gonna make this, that's when you send an email and you say, hey, I need help on this. People will come in and help you 3 days before. They're probably not gonna be as generous after you've missed the deadline. Okay, so block time in your calendar each day, break everything into smaller bites, and set calendar alarms. My Google Calendar is color-coded now to a ridiculous level because I literally put alarms on myself for things like you have to download the bank statement and send it to the accountant, right? So on the first of every month, there's a green label that says download bank statement, send to the accountant, right? Because I don't want to keep track of when I have to do that. I put it in my calendar and I forgot about it until the day that I have to do it. But as soon as that alarm comes up, I diligently go, I do it off the to-do list. So those kinds of things can seem tedious and ridiculous at the beginning, but they work. All right, number 3 is not setting goals with every project and asking for feedback. So even though you're a freelancer and you are technically contributing to someone else's work, you yourself have to set at least one goal, one growth goal for yourself that you're going to achieve in the process of doing this work, whatever that might be. For you, it might be scripting a full episode. For some of us, it might be composing the music for an episode. For some other ones of us, it might be doing a full interview in the field with a guest. Whatever that growth goal for you, you've got to have one for every single one of your projects, because that's really how you're going to measure whether or not that time was well spent for you. The client will get what they needed from you. You've got the skills. But what are you walking away with out of that particular assignment? So taking a mix of work that challenges you, that you always have to be raising your level of difficulty. So you want to think about that. Share your growth goals with your client and your teammates. Ask for feedback regularly. Set measurable outcomes based on both the client's needs and your growth goals. And seek out work that is commensurate with achieved growth goals, right? So once you've mastered, drafting a full episode, the next few assignments that you go out for should include drafting episodes, right? If you're trying to become a better sound engineer, once you feel good about that and you've gotten feedback from a couple of sound engineers, seek out work that demands that you do some sound engineering, right? Because you are acquiring the skills as you go. All right, second one is not setting quarterly or annual goals. I'm gonna skip through the why we do this. How to fix it: get a mentor, set goals, and make them measurable, right? So you can do this by saying, I'm gonna earn X amount of dollars in quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3. Or I'm going to gain these 4 skills by quarter 3. Or I'm going to have worked on a nonfiction show because I've been doing fiction my entire career. Or I'm gonna challenge myself to go work on a documentary journalism show because I've been doing interview shows this whole time, right? So set those goals for yourself because it will make job searching far, far more interesting. And finally, drum roll please. The biggest mistake that we make is we do not act like businesses. I know this from experience. Ladies, we are independent contractors according to the law. As an independent contractor, you are essentially a service provider, an entity that is in a business exchange, quite often with an actual business that's registered. So how do we alleviate this? We register our company. I registered my company on LegalZoom.com. Cost me $200. Best $200 I've ever spent. All of the trademarks that I have for my shows, I've done them on LegalZoom, $400 each trademark. Best $400 I've ever spent. Why? Let me tell you, because you are not making a podcast. Sorry to disappoint. You are not making a TV show. You are not writing a movie. You are not making a documentary. You are creating intellectual property from which you are going to build multiple income streams. Let me repeat that. I'm not making podcasts. I'm not making films. I'm not writing grants so that I can make, I do want to make really dope documentaries, but everything that I am doing is because I want to amass a collection of intellectual property that in the next decade, I'm going to turn into multiple income streams. This is why you have to incorporate your business. Because when you incorporate your business, guess what? You start thinking like a business, and people start treating you like a business. I don't work without a contract with anyone. I don't work without a statement, what's it called? Statement of work, an SOW. I don't work without the formalities that anyone else dealing with another business would work without. I just don't. And if someone is insisting that we don't need the contract, that the emails are fine, bye. Go find someone else to work with. It's not the way I roll, right? So you've got to be way more formal about the way that you do this. The other important part of this is that you need to pass on any liability to a business, right? Not saying that anything's gonna happen, but life will surprise you sometimes. You've got to have a way to defer any potential liability to an entity that is not you personally, because that can be very, very costly, okay? So if you think of yourself as a business, all of the other mistakes, the more you practice being a business, will go away. I guarantee you. I guarantee you that they will go away if you fix this one. Because then you will be thinking about yourself as an entity of growth via the intellectual property that you are creating that will what? Result in multiple income streams. Thank you.
Oh, man. Bows. Like W, the whole thing. Bows. My whole band is totally about to have to send me a digital invoice, 100% guaranteed. Also, slide 8 was like a horrible trip to a psychic. It was like, you've overcommitted. You've procrastinated. I see here that you turn in all of your projects at 11:59 Eastern time, irrespective of where you're working from. See your headline and your heartline, see where they cross here? That's because you don't understand copyright law, because you never finished the book. Amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Julek. Okay, our next on-stage presentation is called What to Expect When You're Expecting to Be Famous. This is for people with big ambitions who are trying to get big, like Hollywood big. And our cast of characters sort of reads like a setup to a joke. We've got a lawyer, an agent, and a manager all walking on stage in a podcast festival. And we're gonna be talking about exactly the roles that they play for their clients, why you might need them on your team, and how to take care of yourself in the meantime. I'm now going to be joined on stage by the moderator for this panel. I'm going to ask you to help me welcome in a moment Priyanka Matu. She's a co-founder of the podcasting media network Irios, we've heard about today, a filmmaker and a producer and a former agent. Priyanka, come on stage if you don't mind. What's up? What's up? Awesome. And our panelists. Please help me welcome Lisa Davis, Sam Safer, and Vanessa Silverton Peel. What to expect when you're expecting to be famous. Thank you, ladies.
Wow. Are we all good?
Do we have this the right distance? I'm like really bad at tech.
Very detail-oriented. Hi, everyone. I'm Priyanka Matu, the co-founder of Irios podcast network. And before that, I was an agent and a producer. I also went to law school. And now I write and direct. So I've seen deal making from every angle. I'll be moderating this discussion about who to talk to, when to talk to them, and what you need to know about deal making so that you don't get taken for a ride. And I want to start by asking each one of you to introduce yourselves and then explain just a bit about how and when you tend to get involved in the deal making process. So we can start with Lisa.
Okay. So I am a lawyer. I'm a partner at the New York and LA firm of Frankfurt, Koenig, Klein, and Sells. And I am an entertainment lawyer, so I work with creatives in every dimension. And I have a lot of clients that are podcasters and are doing deals with all of the usual suspects, the luminaries, the gimlets, crooked media, all of those. And so I'm dealing with rights issues, financing issues, deal issues on a daily basis.
Hi, I'm Sam. Manager, producer. I've produced shows like Broad City and This Is Not Happening and Alternatino. As a manager, we tend to get involved actually pre-deal, kind of more when the seeds are planted and to help nurture the idea and develop them out and then start figuring out who the right partners are. And then we get involved in the deal, obviously, once the deal comes in, but it's a little bit more pre-deal.
I'm Vanessa Silverton-Peel. I'm at CAA. I sit in our scripted television department. I was a news producer actually for 10 years, came into CAA actually on our non-scripted side. And I had been actually a radio producer in the very beginning of my career and so loved podcasts. And through that love of podcasts, very early on started signing podcasters and podcast companies. And since then, moved into our scripted television department to package those podcasts, but also books and articles and stories that journalists have for scripted television. And in terms of when I get involved, it really depends. I like to be involved as early as possible to kind of take a producerial approach to how to help build the story making and figure out sort of what the right path is, whether it's television, film, or something else.
And Sam, you said that you tend to get involved pre-deal. You are often the first one on the team.
Yes.
So do you tend to, could you walk us through a little bit how you seek out people who might be potential podcasters with ideas? What kind of things are you walking them through generally when developing their ideas? What are the kind of questions you come up against when you're representing new talent?
Really, the question is, why are you doing this podcast, right? Why are you the person to tell this story? Because anybody can talk about, let's just say, food or a murder that happened, or anybody can have a funny conversation with someone, but why are you the right person to do it? And that, for me, is always the first question to really hone in on, because I think you have to know what the core voice of the show is, and that, to me, is really led by the host or the creator. And then from there, expanding on that and helping translate it to the buyer or making sure that you're finding the right partner for it, because sometimes the things in your head seem very clear, but they get lost in translation, and making sure that when you're pitching, when you're selling, when you're producing, that the thing that's in your head is actually being projected appropriately rather than truly lost in translation. Because you think you're yeah, obviously, I like to bake, and I went to culinary school, and blah, 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 but it's but nobody knows this about you, so you have to tell them. And just really helping to nurture things like that. And I think of a manager as a very clear mirror, in terms of when you don't have a clear mirror on yourself, right? You have filters, you have all these perceptions about yourself, or knowledge that you think goes without saying, but I think a manager is a very clear mirror to reflect back what is clear and what is not.
So if we're walking through assembling the team kind of chronologically, when does an agent, or who comes in next?
An agent would come in next, and then a lawyer generally, but there's a million different ways to do it. A lot of agents are really hands-on, and it's incredibly valuable, and a lot of lawyers are pretty hands-on too. Lawyers tend to be a little bit less hands-on.
Yeah. It depends.
It
I've worked with Lisa, a lot of hands, a lot of on.
Yes. It really depends, but I think traditionally, the business is changing a lot, but in the 80s, it was manager first, then agent, then lawyer.
I wouldn't get too hung up on that though, to tell you the truth. I really, but I would never worry about if you're joining, if you are working with people in the right order, find the right people. Find the people, your lawyer, your manager, your agent should treat you like an artist, should treat you like a creator. They need to see the best in you, because every call, every meeting, every email that is on your behalf has to be the best representation of you. So it's about those right partnerships, rather than what order you do it in.
I just want to jump in and echo that. And it depends on what the genesis of the idea is. A lot of my clients, they've already established some kind of following in another medium. Maybe they're bloggers, and then they decide to podcast. So in that instance, maybe they have the team already, but their manager doesn't know a lot about podcasts. So they say to me, okay, I'm going to start a podcast company, and I need the infrastructure. So it really depends on what you're doing and how big your ambition is.
Yeah, that's a question for you guys. Where do you come in, like when you generally start to represent podcasters, are you at the conception stage of the idea, or are you brought in when people already have an idea and they're like, we have a listenership and now we need to turn it into something else? Like, what do you mostly see day to day?
So I think it depends again. For me, it's usually, it's after they have the idea, because I think, as Sam said, that's when a manager is really helping you hone and clarify what that idea is.
Kind of like a public figure with an idea.
But just to piggyback on what I heard Juleka talking about as we were waiting to come on stage, one of the things that's key is, as you go out into the world to either get partners or to pitch or to work with even a co-host, you may have an idea, but ideas aren't protectable.
Right.
And so one of the things that's very important to understand, and you can be talking to other people on your team about this, but they'll say, now it's time to get a lawyer involved, because if your idea is just an idea, the idea of, let's do a multi-part series on this true crime situation. There are a zillion of those. That's an idea. Even if you say, let's do it on this one particular unsolved murder case, that's an idea. When you start to write out and what that treatment looks like, what the arc of the story is, that's when you begin to have something that's protectable, and you say, let me get a lawyer to advise me and perhaps register that with the Copyright Office, so that when I go out into the world, somebody doesn't steal my IP.
Do you recommend registering, treatments for copyright? At what point do you do that? Like, what are you actually submitting to the Copyright Office?
You could absolutely register a treatment. Anything, it's got to be sufficiently detailed. I am kind of, I always recite the statutory definition of copyright, which is the tangible expression of an idea fixed in a tangible medium. So, the unique expression, fixed in a tangible medium. So, if it's general, then it's not expensive to register something with the Copyright Office, so it's not like, oh my God, this insurmountable hurdle. It's $40 filing fees. So it's probably better to err on the side of registering earlier than waiting.
Got it. And just to go back to Sam and Vanessa for a second, now when you are sitting down with a client who has either an existing podcast or just a great idea that you think could be taken out to market, whether, for either a TV show or film or, anything really, a live show, what does the process look like? Is it just setting up meetings with producers? How do you tend to kind of approach getting the work out there?
My first question always to clients is, how do you see this, right? Do you see it as a TV show? Do you see it as a feature? Do you see it as a 8-part book series followed up by a TV show, right? So figuring out what their vision is. Second thing is, if they completely own it outright, then it's a lot easier. If there are life rights involved, a lot of times it's securing those life rights. In addition, that very rarely happens before a podcast is made. I highly encourage all of you to get that before, if you can. We can go back to that and talk a little later. It just makes the process so much more seamless. But then it's also really figuring out how involved you want to be, right? Like, most of my clients don't just want to hand over their work. In fact, all of my clients don't just want to hand over their work and say, like, yes, somebody else run with this and take it out into the universe, right? And that's something I really encourage, because the people that are the best to work with, the people that excite me the most, the creators that have drive, who are real artists, have more than one idea. One idea is not that exciting to work with. It's the people who have 1,000 ideas, who are going to be working in this medium forever. And so, if they want to be executive producers on a project, if they want to be even a writer on the project, it's definitely possible these days. There is such a desire out in the world right now, especially in television, also in feature, for intellectual property, it is unbelievable. I think the latest numbers I heard that a third of all TV shows right now are based on intellectual property. Television executives are fascinated by podcasts. They don't understand this world. They really don't. They want to know how you do what you do. They are so hungry for your ideas. So figuring out who those right partners are. So just to be like really granular, and I hope this is helpful. Please tell me if it is not, because I want to be helpful to everyone here. If you have a podcast that already exists, whether it has all the episodes are available yet, whether or not they're even produced, if you really believe that it will make a great TV show, like start having those conversations with agents and managers and lawyers as early as possible. We take stuff out all the time that's in a really, really nascent phase. It does not have to be a giant blockbuster hit yet if it's an original idea. The first step usually for me, my strategy, would be start setting meetings with you, with showrunners and production companies. Because if you just sell an idea directly to a network, you start to lose control over it immediately. You want to partner with experienced, fantastic creative producers that you really, really gel with, that will help to develop it and then go out in the marketplace. And those deals, there is some money up front often for a production company to option it. It tends to not be a life-changing windfall. Don't quit your day job. But that would really be the first step. And I have to tell you, like so many, I would say every single project that I have set up in the last year, the producers, the showrunners, desperately want the involvement, the active day-to-day involvement of the original creator. That is a position that I don't think we've really ever seen before. It is such an exciting time. And so that's really where the process starts. It's usually about like a year, 6 months to a year to really develop. And then from there, just going out and selling it to networks, and that includes obviously all the streamers, broadcast networks, cable networks, and that's kind of where the process is.
If we take that back a step, what about like people in the audience or people at this conference who are like getting incoming calls about their projects? Because I feel like there is a lot of that going on, and they might not have representation or access to representation. So what are they like? Can you please?
Well, everyone has access to representation because everyone has Google. So. I mean, like podcast producers are the most like wily alley cat people I've ever met in my life. You can find anyone. Everyone in this room has access to representation, like full stop.
I also,
I was just gonna say, so I am very wary of incoming calls because for me, generally, they're not necessarily the best. So you want to have as many people like essentially bidding on your project as possible. If you are starting to get incoming calls, it's a great sign that people are connecting with your work, but you should already know at that point people are connecting with your work because you're getting feedback from your audience. Like people who listen to podcasts are so passionate about what they listen to, you're already gonna know. So the incoming calls, the incoming emails are great. File them away, hold on to them, and look for the kind of representation that you want, and throw those into the mix for sure. And I would definitely say honor the early interest, right? Don't cut them out, take those meetings, include them in your list of people. It's the right thing to do, it is the nice thing to do, and sometimes that will end up being who you're working with, right? They may be the most passionate about the project, but don't limit yourself ever to just the incoming cold calls or emails.
Yeah, I think we all know that like if one producer's interested, other producers are interested.
It's always the tip of the iceberg.
I'm all about maintaining ownership as long as you possibly can until the right partner comes along, especially with podcasts. Like you were kind of asking about like what's the earlier process and like what are the earlier steps. And for me, it's like, what are you waiting for? If you want to do it, do it. It's so easy to start the creation process.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's advertising and other things that come along, but for the most part, like, people don't want to be pushing a train out of the station. They want to they want to be trying to jump on a train that is leaving the station. And I think you as a creator, as a voice, it's your job to be like, this is a great fucking idea. It's happening whether anyone ever gets it or not. This train is leaving the station and people will get on board. That kind of belief, that kind of like...
That energy. This is happening with or without you.
Yeah, that blind optimism, like there's something like magical about that. And producers will find you. And the truth is the reps will find you too. Like we're prowling for people because our job doesn't exist without people creating things. So for me, like, I'm like, if you're doing this thing, protect it as long as you possibly can until it's like really, okay, we're really ready to go to the next step. And this person adds so much value because I've created so much value that I'm not giving up something for nothing. I think sometimes when you're starting out, you're like so myopic and you're at home and you think that nobody sees you, and especially with podcasts, because it's something you do in a room alone, that sometimes when you get attention, it feels like, and it's like, no, they know, don't worry about it. Follow that gut, follow that guide, like keep creating. That's all that matters.
And then once you've taken, say you've like taken something out, you've sold it, it's set up somewhere. Lisa, do you mind just walking us through kind of the like major deal points? We've talked a little bit about IP, but you know, all the other points, because we hear IP, but what else should people be keeping in mind to protect themselves?
Well, I think the main thing is, how are you going to ultimately get paid once you have this partner? So that is the be all and end all. So are you splitting ad revenue? Is someone just trying to pay you a fee? Are they trying to acquire all of your IP and then just tie you to ancillaries? I mean, I would echo what Vanessa said, that everybody is looking to have the original creators connected, but what you want is a guarantee that you're attached to everything and you're getting half of what they're getting at a minimum. If they're doing a television project or a film project or something else, maybe a stage play, who knows? And then there's the issue about what rights you reserve for yourself. You know, you might want to reserve those stage rights, print publication rights. You know, if people are journalists or writers, there might be a book that you might want to do. And so it's really about how the rights are divided and how the money is divided. Those are the key things. And then also talk to them about what budget they're going to commit to this. Because again, if you've been producing a podcast and you've already figured out how to get that podcast up and you've been paying for it, you know, what are they bringing to the table? This is the whole issue in picking partners. What are they bringing to the table? How much additional revenue? What kind of sales team do they have? How are they going to be marketing it? Or how are they going to build your audience? If you're giving up a piece of your potential revenue, how much are they going to bring in? If they have a network so that the ad sales are going to be significant, then maybe it's worth it. If it's just somebody that doesn't really have that reach, you have to really push hard and think long and hard about how much you're going to give up.
So that, I mean, we've talked a little bit about like sort of TV and film, but just to like take a step back and maybe people who are earlier in the cycle of like podcast creation, like if you have a great idea and if you have a client who has a great idea and they're taking it out to podcast networks, what are the deal terms you look for? Like what are the deal breakers? What are the, you know, as far as like IP ownership, as far as like ancillary, right? Like what do you think everyone should be looking for?
I think everybody should be looking for, what's the revenue split?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, you may not be thinking about ancillaries yet, but so, you know, if somebody is acquiring content, they're either going to get more subscribers to their service or they're going to sell more ads. And so you should be, if your content drives either one of those, you should be participating in one or the other. And so the question is, it depends on what their model is.
Yeah.
You know, is it an audience metric that you get a bonus? You know,
How
is
do
it
you measure
ad
that?
revenue?
Yeah.
Are you just splitting it?
And then how about, I mean, ownership of RSS feed, we've talked about.
Right.
I think people pretty much know about
and
that.
these days, people are really, you know, when you're doing these big deals, they're trying not to let you own the RSS feed. That's really starting to go away. So, you know, that's a real issue about you're losing direct control of your audience,
right.
Access to it. So that's, again, you want to make sure that whoever you're partnering with is big enough that it's worth possibly forfeiting some of that control.
You had also mentioned budget, because I think that a lot of creators and producers are hearing from people, okay, make cereal, but make it for $12. So you like to talk upfront about budget and schedule and all that stuff. So maybe you could outline that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, the issue is how many episodes, how many episodes are you doing currently? How many episodes is whoever the partner is committing to? Because if it's going to be significantly fewer than you're doing because they're spending more, does that make your audience start to lose interest because they're not getting the frequency? If it's more, you have to think about the workload. I mean, most podcasters that I work with, it's one of their 5 different hats that they wear and 5 different jobs that they do. So what you don't want to do is walk into a situation where they're saying, okay, you're going to split the ad revenue, but you're going to be working like crazy, and it's going to, take time away from the other things that are generating, the money you need to pay your mortgage. So I think that's the other thing you have to balance and take a look at.
My last question for you about the granular kind of deal-making structure stuff is paywalls. I knew you were going to do that. So can we talk about paywalls a little bit? Because I've heard a lot of people.
A lot about
paywalls. So I'm just going to let you go off.
Well, I won't go off. I mean, I'm aware of where we are.
Yeah.
And, anyway. What I will say about paywalls is, again, I think it really depends on how mature your podcast is and how habituated your audience is to going and getting your content for free.
Right.
Because it's, if you're with a company that's behind a paywall, okay, there's upfront money, but what does the back end look like? And if there are bonuses that are based on audience, if your audience drops off because people are not used to paying a subscription for your content, the upfront money may be all that you see.
Right.
And so,
First.
I've seen clients say, that looks like it's appealing, but actually, I don't want to do that.
Right, that makes sense. A question for Vanessa and Sam, back to kind of like entertainment world, is do you see people coming to you with podcasts with podcasting is a lot of work. It's a big commitment. You have to make a lot of episodes and really court a listenership and market the crap out of it. But I feel like there are certainly people coming to you with stars in their eyes, focused more on the touring and the TV ideas. And what do you say to them?
Yes. I say yes. I say do it. Look, multiple revenue streams for any creative idea is always a fantastic thing, right? So a lot of the areas that we cover with our podcast clients are live tours, books, and then ancillary rights, obviously, for television and film. And as Lisa mentioned, obviously, stage rights, which can be very significant and very exciting. And we try to carve out all of those things and maintain ownership for our clients in all of them. But I mean, is your question about the what we're looking for?
What is your advice when someone comes to you with kind of a podcast that is still emerging?
Oh, I mean, we can go out. I mean, I've sold podcasts for scripted television before a single episode has been produced.
Wow.
Fully. I mean, really and truly, off of a 10-minute, off of literally a 10-minute audio segment of what would have been, a 50-minute episode. If there is an amazing idea, and this is why I say really and truly, like your podcast, it does not need to be like the #1 podcast on iTunes, which what does that even mean? But it really doesn't. If it's a really fantastic idea, if it's something that's super sellable in television, we will tell you what that is. And it can be super early stages. And really and truly, there just are no rules right now. There needs to be something there. Like you need to have scripts if it's a fiction podcast. You need to know what the episode breakdown is going to be. You need to kind of know what is the payoff, right? Where is this story going? What is it really about? But it does not have to be totally done. That said, if we think as a team that it could end up being a huge hit and that would be a point of leverage, we then may wait, which I've also done before, for something to debut to kind of build that feeling in the marketplace that it is super competitive, that is, like Sam said, that train that is leaving the station and you get to jump on or not, but it's leaving without you. So it really just depends, but I think it goes back to the first question that we all talked about, which is like, when do you start working with representation? And I think why we say earlier is better because of that. So we can kind of work with you strategically to build kind of like the best marketplace environment for you to take your project out.
Okay, would you have any, I mean, that's surprising and amazing to hear. I didn't realize you were selling podcasts before anyone's even listened to them.
That's new to me.
That's incredible.
You need an audience for touring, though. That's for sure.
Yeah,
no question.
That's a very, very good point. And then I guess I just wonder what your specific advice is for certain genres, because yes, we've seen a lot of reported pieces get attention, but then now there are more scripted pieces coming out. Do you have different advice for, like, whether it's like a comedy podcast or like a scripted podcast? What are you seeing there is a hunger for, and is there like different advice according to like different genres?
I mean, generally speaking, the most sellable stuff for television and for feature is highly produced narrative podcasts. Really, really hard to do interview-based podcasts as a TV show. I mean, maybe as non-scripted, but I do more scripted. And comedy is tricky. Comedy is very tricky as IP. I don't really understand why that is, but it's just a fact right now. And so anything, if it's a scripted podcast, so like fiction or nonfiction stories, those are definitely the most sellable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But touring, I would think, Sam, I don't do touring. I mean, CAA does touring. I work with my touring colleagues, so I don't do that.
Yeah, comedy is great for touring,
Yeah.
but you have to have an audience. So it is like, I feel like all of my answers are basically the same, but it is like creative forward, creative first. Like, you have to love this idea more than anyone and be willing to do it and keep doing it, because your audience will find you if you're committed to it. But yeah, definitely for sure, scripted narrative and unscripted kind of narrative.
Sam, why do you think, I know that you like to have these long conversations, and we have had long conversations about comedy. Why do you think comedy is tricky for adaptation?
Because, do you mean like comedy scripted, or do you mean like interview?
Either or.
Well, I think...
Well, interview doesn't have an inherent narrative engine.
Yes. So, like, what am I seeing other than this funny person talking to another funny person?
What about people who want a late night show, or like, I mean, I guess unscripted. What are the opportunities
then that's not based,
out there?
That tends to not be based on IP, really,
Yeah.
or at least it so far
It's
hasn't.
Mostly personality based.
Right.
Like, they're looking for famous people, quite frankly, people with like a huge social media following, or people that have built up their business in another sort of way. Right. There is Mark Maron. I don't know how many Mark Marons there are. Right. But like, Mark Maron exists, and he, it's funny because he had been a stand-up comedian for years and was the most bitter, angry, like frustrated stand-up comedian.
I worked with Mark when he was going through his first divorce.
I cannot imagine.
He's an amazing. We worked at Air America together. He's an amazing person.
Lovely
but
human.
he worked really hard to build up his radio skills, and he's incredible at it.
Incredible. And he also, it's funny because he turned to podcasts because he was like, fuck this fucking business. Yeah. And like, there was like
I think he was saying that for 20 years before he started a podcast.
Yeah, like there was like a real honesty to the WTF. It wasn't like, this is the way in. He was like, really broke down the barriers and wanted to be
also
honest.
had an amazing producer, a guy named Brendan McDonald, who is an incredible producer, helped him craft that show, is still with him, has been with him since Air America, so 2004. So producing talent also.
Yes. But I guess to my point is that, like, not a lot of people are going to be a Mark Maron, right? And also, a lot of comedians that are doing podcasts are also supporting it with working on acting and touring, and they're doing stand-up, and there's like a lot of other avenues by which they're getting known, rather than just through podcasts. So it is trickier that way.
Right. Lisa, would you see the same? You're seeing mostly like narrative fiction deals.
Yes,
not
for
kind
sure.
of unscripted. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely not unscripted, unless, there are people, as Sam and Vanessa were saying, that have other profiles. I have clients that are stand-up comedians that are touring and also have a podcast, or people who are motivational speakers and bloggers who also have a podcast. And then their touring tends to be very successful because they have a profile somewhere else, but I haven't seen those kinds of shows turn into film or television deals.
I also think that like just in general, like aside from podcasts, trying to get a late night show off the ground is so hard.
Yeah, I mean, there are only so many slots, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Can we, sorry, I have to like wrap this up in a little bit, but I did want to ask you guys a little bit about pitching both podcast networks and then pitching TV eventually. What are the sort of elements of a pitch? What are like do's and do nots? Like if you could walk through that a little bit, what does a pitch look like?
A pitch, like a pitch for a podcast or a pitch for TV?
I mean, both would be great.
I'll speak to pitch for TV if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So for pitch for TV, first of all, it is a long and laborious process to figure out how to develop something for TV. It really is. This is why you want to work with the best producers, the best production companies, the people who know how to develop, who have in mind exactly what the show is, who know exactly where they're going to take it, who have the best relationships with the executives at those networks, having those targets in mind, and then really crafting it, right? So it is, I would say it's not that much different from, how you sort of conceive of the podcast. It's where is it going? Who are the characters? What is going to keep people, tuning in over and over and over? What is that internal narrative engine? What is exciting and different about it? A lot of what's selling in TV right now is a lot of like genre blending, right? So think of like Succession, right? It's a 1-hour drama. It's also the funniest comedy on TV. So a lot of that, like that blending, right? But we don't have to spend too much time on like what's selling in the TV marketplace. But in order to prepare for a pitch, there are extensive materials that are put together. The production company will do that. I think for people who are sitting here today, who are thinking that their show might be a good TV show, I wouldn't worry too much about how to put your pitch together, because that's really what a seasoned television production company is going to do with you and do for you. Don't self-edit and not try and go make it into television if you are not sure how to pitch it. You are not supposed to know how to pitch it. You know, that it is not your responsibility necessarily. You'll know the story forward and back that you want to tell, but that's why it's so key to find those good partners who know how to do this, who have a proven track record of selling.
I would also add, though, having been a TV and film producer and now being on the network buying side, people who develop podcasts, they're very similar to TV pitches. You've worked out, like so many years of like the narrative that, it's just about someone kind of massaging it into place. So also have faith in what you've already done. You've already plotted it all out.
But figuring out how it could live for 10 seasons, because that would be the goal, right? And how would you maybe incorporate visuals, right? All that stuff. But I work with your collaborators on that. I wouldn't worry too much at this stage.
Great, thanks, guys. Thanks so much for your time. And we can open it up to questions now. I think there are 2 mics. There's a mic on that side and a mic on that side. If you want to ask any questions, you can come up to the front. Where are they? Oh, there's one right there, and there's one right there.
Hi. I have a question. So you guys have been mostly talking about if you're an independent producer, and I'm wondering what advice you have for people who are employees, who I know, like I'm an employee of a public radio station. I've read the employee handbook. I know they own my intellectual property, but if I'm creating a podcast that I think has potential for TV adaptation or movies, like what advice do you have?
So let me speak directly to that. So the advice that I give folks that are working for companies is the work for hire language typically only covers what you are doing in the course of your employment. So now if your job is to produce podcasts for public radio, then but you can also potentially go to them and say, I want to carve this out. It depends on what you're producing. And, if, for example, you're producing true crime and your idea is not a true crime, but something really far afield of what you're doing in your day job, you might be able to approach them. But the thing that I always tell clients is that the work for hire language covers what is done in the course of your employment related to your job. So, is that helpful?
That's a good question.
that was like, that's the loss. So you
Does
made-
that answer the question?
Well, I guess my question was a show I'm making for.
So you're
my
already
empl-
doing it for
yeah.
them.
Oh, they own it,
I
probably.
mean,
They own it.
They'll own
They
it,
own it.
but depending
but
on
you
your
could-
relationship with them, I mean,
you could go
they
and
may
carve-
be, they may be very supportive. Like especially if you're hosting it and not just producing it, they may be very supportive of having you be a part of those conversations if there is some sort of ancillary business to be done.
That's why I'm saying you could go to them and try to carve certain things out, or say, it's a renegotiation of your employment agreement, because right now you may be on salary, but if you're saying, look, I've created something that's really got value, I should have a piece of that income stream.
And if you have
And
a
that's a
representative
negotiation.
too, I would just say part of what we would do is, if that podcast was then going out into the marketplace and you were and your employer maybe was leading the conversations with different production companies, part of what we would be saying to those production companies is you are going to want the original creator involved as an executive producer and a consultant and get fees right for those things, and get maybe some sort of individual lump sum outside of what your employer is getting, and all those things are totally possible.
Should we go over here? Hi.
Hi. I have a question about agenting and maybe managing as well, actually. It might be for both of you guys. I am new to podcasting and I have 20 years of experience as a writer, a fiction writer. So I'm really familiar with what agenting looks like in the book world. And I know you guys have mentioned, maybe your podcast also has a book or something like that. And that's something I'm thinking about a lot with my project. And so I'm wondering, as I'm early in this project, knowing that down the road in the next couple of years there will be a book as well as the podcast, you're all saying get representation early, but also what does that look like, agent versus managing? And at this point, and when I'm just at the beginning of this process, what should I be thinking about? Oh, and also, is there overlap here? Like, do you also represent books, and is that like very common in the agenting world with podcasting?
CAA does have a books department. I also sit in our books group, which does books to TV and film. And then we are representing those rights for books that CAA represents. And also we work very closely with our co-agents, so literary agents, to represent books to the best of our ability. And it's both, I guess, is the answer. I personally don't sell books to publishers, and so we use our book agents to do that.
Managers and agents also work together, right? So like everybody I represent also has an agent, and agencies like CAA, WME, TA, they all have a bunch of different departments. There's a book department, a touring department, a theatrical department, a TV lit department, a feature lit department, right? So there's a ton of people covering a ton of different territories, and that's why being at an agency like that is so great, is because whatever you want to do, like you'll have your point person who will kind of run point for, like they're your quarterback. I don't know much about sports, but it makes sense to me. Like they're your quarterback inside the agency helping you navigate all those areas, whereas like my company is very small. I represent 12 people. I'm kind of more day-to-day, more hands-on. A lot of agents are very, very hands-on. I just happen to have more time because I only have 12 people. And I don't think it's necessarily like go find representation as soon as possible. I think it's like if somebody is interested, if you meet someone you click with, like work with them. It doesn't hurt to have representation as early as possible, but also like don't settle. If somebody approaches you and you're like, this doesn't feel like the right fit, like don't do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Should we go back over here? I think we have time for you guys. Yeah.
Hi. So could you explain, you mentioned pitching TV, but pitching a podcast idea to a podcast network, assuming you've taken the steps to retain as much intellectual property as you can and not yet having representation. What is that process, or would you even recommend doing that without representation?
You definitely can do it without representation. Every company's a little bit different. So I work with Gimlet Media. They really prefer you to come in with the idea as nascent a point as possible, because they have so many great producers that can help sort of develop it in sort of the vision that they have being sort of, the HBO of podcasting, right? Every company is a little bit different. A lot of others may want you to come in with the idea sort of with, cut out a whole cloth. And then I would say, you may have, at certain companies, you may have more leverage to maintain ownership if, for example, you already have some of the audio. If you've already done some interviews, if, if you are basically like delivering them, here are the 8 episodes, here are the 10 episodes, it's exactly going to be this. I already know how it's going to happen. I already have some of my scripts done. You may be able to sort of maintain more ownership at that point.
I mean, at Erios, I know that we love a paragraph telling us what the show is, and then audio is great. But if not, then we can work together to, come up with a pilot. But really just the idea, that's what we're content first. So it's really about the idea always.
I always think of it as like if you're shopping for books, when you read the back of the book, like to tell you what it is. Just like that, basically.
That's a good point. All right, last question.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
Vanessa was my agent at CA. She's great.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, babe. I have a question for Lisa.
Yeah.
So my business partner and I just launched last week a scripted fiction podcast studio, much like a film and television studio. So IP is our business model, right? And everything that we do will have a pipeline to film and television because I come from the film and television world, as does my partner. Our question is, what upfront fees and back ends do you think are fair to offer in the scripted fiction space for creators in return for ownership? Because it's a very different space for them. Like when I sell a movie to Universal, Universal owns that movie. They can change it. They can do whatever they want with it. I've now sold it.
So before I answer your question, what's the name of your company? Because I'm doing a deal like this right now, and I have a feeling you might be the person on the other side.
Well, we literally, our Hollywood Reporter just announced us last week, so it's not us. But we're Summer Audio.
Oh, okay, so it's not you. So it depends. I mean, I think if your main business model is to go to film and television, then you should be offering film and television-like numbers, because otherwise you're trying to get, content that can garner those kind of fees for your company at cut rate prices. So I think you have to offer the same kind of numbers you would offer to somebody if they were coming in to write a pilot or write a treatment for you for television. I mean, somewhat discounted, but not a whole lot.
Right, and then with that, would you also advise your clients to push for, I know what Vanessa would do, push for producer credits and things like that?
Absolutely. Because you guys have the expertise and the connections, but my clients tend to be the people with the ideas that are doing the writing, and they should be locked for life. They should be producers. If they're writers, they should be writing EPs potentially rather than non-writing EPs. So yes, I would be pushing for all of that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, everyone. I think that's, Sorry, is there a time for a follow-up? Until we get cut off, yeah.
I got so excited, I almost I forgot what my question was. Oh, God.
It was
This is a nightmare.
This is like a nightmare in underpants thing.
It was a follow-up
to her question,
and you back-ended compensation.
Yes.
For scripted.
And oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm going to sit down because I might remember it in a second if I'm not facing you.
You can email us.
I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Producer, you're up and go.
Thank you so much to Priyanka, Lisa, Sam, and Vanessa. We're gonna do a really quick break. So if you wanna hit the restroom or grab a coffee, I just had a cortado. The guy who's working right now is really good at making them. We're gonna start at 5 p.m. sharp. So we'll see you in just a few. Break. That was what you expected. Hey, bravo. Thank you so much. Well done.
Why are we not there? You're not. That's the point.
Wow.
Nobody said
I could be okay with it. Tomorrow, I could be okay with it.
What? Magic Mike?
Yeah, it's Magic Mike. Well,
Whatever.
Jen, Saturday. Seems like a bunch Oh, that's definitely what I'm wearing next week. Oh, you're not open shop. Oh, you're not. I can't tell if I'm allowed to get salty. And they asked for songs and they didn't even work. I just like it more. They just needed to say it for some people. So I was like, cool, I'll swap out a song. They're like, I think this line. And they were like, that's pretty nice. But I haven't, like, you know, like, if you can't we're going too hard, like if you're inviting people, you know what I mean? But I don't want to get too, yeah. What up, Spring?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, I'm getting all salty, but I can't look at it. I have Papa like this, dog. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that mess. This next one's in power as well, right? It's pretty fast. So I have a note.
Okay, we are at the last session of the day. What's up? During our last conversation, I took a seat in the center section here, and there was one moment when the comment was made about the kind of artist that a professional team, is really excited to work for and with. The artist that has not one great idea, but 1,000 great ideas. I think I audibly disrupted the people around me because I went, oh, it's so hard to get even one really, really strong idea. So in our next session, we'll be talking with Avery Trufelman about ideation, about where really good ideas come from and what happens in that process between that moment of a spark or inspiration or hitting a vein, essentially, and then arriving at a polished podcast series. If you're unfamiliar with Avery, fix it. She's a producer of 99% Invisible. She creates stories there about architecture and design. She's a host of Articles of Interest, which is a 6-part series about clothing and fashion. It's I always love podcasts particularly that introduce you to an interest you didn't know you had yet. For me, that was one of those. And also of Nice Try, where she's exploring utopias. Please help me welcome to stage Avery Trufelman.
Hey, everyone. We made it. We made it to the last session. Good job. So I just have to say, thank you so much for having me and for coming to listen to this session. And it's not important and it doesn't matter, but you all look amazing. Like, the fashion at this conference is incredible. I can't believe it. So, yeah, my name is Avery. I'm a staff producer at 99% Invisible. I host our spin-off series about fashion called Articles of Interest, and I also host this series with Vox Media called Nice Try, which is about utopias. And so in this conference, we've talked a lot about podcasts and how they pertain to business, and what it means to market yourself and sell your voice and sell your product and, get your words out there to more people in the world. But, with this exciting profusion of new business opportunities and new listeners and new markets, there is always, we want to keep podcasts from just being a product or just being content. And I think the way to keep the audio work you make limber and interesting and fun is to abandon your plans, which isn't to say don't make plans and then forget about them. But this is really about not just staying in a studio, going out into the field and taking risks. And I'm just gonna use a pretty extreme example of a time it went really off the rails for me, and how it actually benefited the final product. So I just wanted to start by sharing the recorder that I use. I still use this recorder. Recently, our engineer on 99% Invisible was like, listen, you have to get a better microphone. But for years, I was just using a Zoom H2N, and sometimes I would even use the internal microphone, which is no. But I just wanted to share this because I feel like at a lot of other podcast conferences, there are a lot of gearheads out there who are like, oh, you need X thousands of dollars worth of equipment, or you need XYZ editing system. And I think for the longest time, especially when I was just getting started, I was using an H2N and GarageBand, because I think the most important thing is to just have a good idea. And so the question naturally arises, and the question we get all the time, and I get all the time, is where do you get your ideas from? And I wish there was an idea depot where you could just go and get ideas. But this question of where ideas come from was actually the subject of a story I did about 2 years ago called The Pool and the Stream. And I'll just play the beginning for you.
This is 99% Invisible. I'm Roman Mars. When people ask us where we get our stories from, the answer is usually hard to pin down. It could be something one of us noticed walking around, or something a friend mentioned, or some forwarded link on Twitter. It's nearly impossible to say where inspiration comes from in any art form. It's a long way from the seed of an idea to its execution.
And so that's the start of the story. And I'm just gonna start at the beginning for how the story began and walk through how it came together. And I'll tell you like the loose plot of the story, because this is not about the story itself, it's about the making of the story. Okay, so once upon a time, we used to work in an architecture firm. 99% Invisible was in like the corner of an architecture office. Come in, have a seat. And an architect came up to me once upon a time and was like, hey, Avery, why are swimming pools shaped like kidney beans? And I was like, I don't know. It's probably like a useful shape. It's probably a pleasing shape, whatever. And then that was like the early seed of the idea. But then it really started to germinate when a friend of mine, Andrew Norton, who's also a radio producer, sent me this email. Basically, it just says, thought this might be interesting for like a blog post, not sure it's a whole story. Andrew is a radio producer himself, and so when he sent me and my colleague this article, you can see that my colleague was like, no, I'm not interested in it, go for it. It didn't seem like there was a lot there. But it was basically about how the first bean-shaped swimming pool was in Finland, designed by some famous architect named Alvar Aalto, which was important for the history of skateboarding. And I don't know, I'm not a skateboarder, I wish I was, I don't know anything about skateboarding, and I don't know what it was about this article, but I found it weirdly intriguing, and it just kind of stuck with me for some reason. And yeah, as you can see in this email exchange, it just sparked some interest. And I didn't really know why, or I didn't really know what to do with it, so I just kind of sat on it and mulled it over for a while, but not on my own. Because here's a key thing I find. I find I really need to talk about my ideas and what I'm working on and what I'm thinking about. I absolutely have empathy for those writers and thinkers and artists who don't want to share their works in progress, because I think it's a Mary McCarthy quote that's like, to advertise one's aspirations is to broadcast one's failures. Like, I get that. But you just never know who's gonna know something. And so anyone who knows me knows at a party, I'm always grabbing a friend and being like, can I tell you about what I'm working on? I'm really bad at small talk. I'm like, all right, here's what I've got going on. I'm thinking about kidney-shaped swimming pools. Do you know anything? And it's really, really helpful. So one afternoon, I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and I mentioned this article about like kidney-shaped swimming pools and why they were important to skateboarding, and he told me about this documentary called Dogtown and Z-Boys, which is very famous, but I had never seen it before. So I bought it and I watched it a bunch of times. It's all about the history of skateboarding and the way that skateboarding evolved from surfing when a bunch of bored kids in Venice Beach were looking for something to do when the waves were bad. And it was during this huge drought in Southern California, everyone was forced to empty all their swimming pools. And so there were all these empty, curvy swimming pools. And these skate rats would like break into people's backyards and they would skate in these empty pools. And it totally changed the way skateboarding worked as a sport. Because before this time, skateboarding was just kind of something you did on a flat surface. The tricks were like standing on your head or like lifting one leg. They weren't low to the ground. They weren't imitating surfing in this way. So these kids kind of like furthered surfing as an art form. And they were able to do this because there were so many empty kidney-shaped pools all over Los Angeles. And that really struck my interest because like, how did this pool get from Finland to Los Angeles? Why was everyone copying this one pool in Finland that the article talked about by this one architect named Alvar Aalto? And then luck struck. This is what luck looks like. A bolt of luck. So my friend Louisa Beck, who's an amazing producer who's based in Berlin, we had stayed in touch with postcards and letters. She had lived in Berkeley before, and I'm based in the Bay Area. And then one day, she emailed me to say that German National Radio is organizing a conference, and she asked if I would come give a presentation with her about the state of American podcasting and radio. I mean, it was kind of an excuse to like hang out in Germany together. And it felt like a sign to me. I was like, well, as long as I'm in Europe, I'll just pop on over to Finland because I'm an idiot and I'm an American and I don't understand that Finland and Germany are actually like very far apart. So, and again, I'm like very lucky that I have a job that lets me do that. This is like an amazing thing to be in, but I was like, hey, I'm already getting my airfare paid for Germany. Like, can I just pop on over to Finland? And my boss said yes, which was very lucky. So once I knew that I was going to Finland, I really started digging into the research about this pool because I knew I wanted to visit it. And I saw it was in this town, again, in the middle of nowhere, not in the way to anything. It was in this town called Nurmimarkku in the middle of Western Finland, and it's a part of this estate designed by this architect, Alvar Aalto, called the Villa Mairia. And the building itself is kind of a museum. It's full of all these very important architectural advances. It's not just the pool. So I emailed the Villa Mairia about coming to visit and let them know that like I'm this American podcaster for this really big deal show, and I'm really excited to come record and talk to their docents. And I get the worst response in the world, which is that the pool is closed for 6 months and can I come back later? And I emailed them again, like, please, 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 can we just like stand next to the pool and like pretend that we're in it, like, please, please. And Finns do not give a shit about American podcasts. And so the answer is just flat no. And so part of me is like, well, maybe I'll just do it like those punks did in Venice Beach and I'll break into the pool. And so I actually contacted some Finnish skateboarders in Helsinki and I was like, do you guys want to drive 4 hours to the middle of Western Finland and break into this pool with me? And I was actually Googling like prison conditions for trespassing in Finland. It's like, how bad could it be? Maybe you can get like a secondary degree or something. And at this point, again, I hardly know if there's a story there yet. And again, the estate is 4 hours away from Helsinki. I don't know if the pool is empty or full of water or full of debris or completely roped off, or if there's any way to break in at all. So I decided, like, it's a terrible idea. I abandoned that idea. That's a dumb idea. So ultimately, I just have this ticket to Finland. Like, I reasoned that I would take what I would get and more or less just kind of wing it. Turns out it's very hard to just wing it. I wrangled one interview with a historian at the Aalto Foundation who could talk to me about Alvar Aalto, the designer of the pool, and some of his history and why he designed the pool, but that was kind of it. I had that one interview, and then I had all these days that I was gonna fill with like travel and interviews, and I had nothing lined up. And I fell into a very deep depression. Especially, when I'm like, oh, this story isn't working out. I'm an idiot. Like, I'm costing my company money right now. I'm not giving anything back. I walked around alone. I went to a sauna alone. I went to museums alone. And it's really hard also because, like, Finnish is just completely unlike any other language in the world. Like, it just doesn't exist anywhere in the language tree. You can't even, like, pretend you can vaguely start to understand it. And it also doesn't help that Finns are very reserved and keep to themselves. Like, it was the kind of place where I was on a bus and I'd see a baby and I would, like, try to smile at the baby and the baby would be like, they are very solitary people, but you don't have to take my word for it. Their benches are actually designed like this. That is true. So listen, I don't mean to hate on Helsinki. It's a beautiful place, but for the love of God, if you go there, like, go with a friend. Do not go alone. And so it's also a terrible place. Honestly, I pride myself on being like pretty friendly and I can go to a bar and like I love, again, talking about what I'm working on in social situations. But this country was just not having it. So I shamelessly went on social media and asked if anyone I knew anyone at all in Helsinki, just so I'd have someone to hang out with and save me from my stupid, useless failure of a trip to Finland. And thank heavens, a friend of mine connected me with this expat American couple, and we met up and we had this like 4-hour-long dinner because we were all like, conversation, wow. And it turned out one person in this couple was a professor for the local university, which is Alto University, named after Alvar Aalto, the architect who designed the pool. And so this professor introduced me to some experts at the university who could talk more about Alvar Aalto and the pool. And he introduced me to someone I would have never found on my own. Like I would have never even have known to Google him. This guy. He's a Finnish skate park designer named Jana Sario. He's the only one in Finland. He designs curvy pools, especially for skating. He'd been trained in architecture at Aalto University, and it was perfect. And that was luck striking again. I was like, okay, I have this, the story is back on. And this brings me to my own kind of personal mantra when reporting, which is make a plan and then be prepared to abandon it. Or at least stray from it. Like craft an attack, think of all the voices you might want, all the angles you might want to touch on, prepare an outline, like research all you can. I had read a lot about the pool and about Alvar Aalto. Know the points and then just be prepared for everything to change. Because this can be in the macro sense, like in terms of who you want to speak to, because, you know, I didn't know I was gonna talk to this guy, but because I was so prepared, I could just kind of delve into it right away, just because I knew the kind of points I wanted from the story. And this also is in the micro sense, in terms of every single interview. Like, here, like this is an example. Like I usually print out 4 pages of notes for every interview I do. And if someone has written a book, I will read it twice. And I will write out all these notes, make like minute points of everything I may want to touch on, read it over and over and over and over again up until I get to the person's door, and then I fold it up and I put it away. And oftentimes they don't even know that I've prepared this much for an interview. Because again, like I think the more you prepare, the more you can let chance strike and just let the interview just kind of unfold in a very natural, organic way and roll with it. And also, I think, you know, you can tell when someone's done their research. Like you can tell when someone knows what they're talking about. And to me, this seems like the greatest gift you can give someone who's giving you their voice. Like if you are a podcast producer, you are Ursula the Sea Witch. Like you are using other people's voices. And the least you can do is kind of like show them the courtesy and the respect by preparing in a really in-depth way. So yeah. Also, it leaves, by not looking at notes and not, like, this is why I also love to go to people's houses or like interview them in person and not just in studio. So you can really look them in the eye and let the conversation kind of flow, and it leaves a little bit of room for you to be surprised. And that's the best thing, when you can learn something new in the course of an interview and you can get your reaction in there. So after I got back from Finland, I was like, okay, I have to figure out the rest of the story. I knew I had to talk to the director of Dogtown and Z-Boys because I wanted to talk about skateboarding and how it related to this pool in some way. And after lots of emailing and cajoling, I was finally able to talk to the director of this documentary. But as you know, the documentary, Dogtown and Z-Boys, is a fairly popular movie. And I didn't just want the director more or less summarizing what the movie was about. And so I needed to find a way to make the scene come to life, which brings me to the next key thing in reporting, which is to bring in the action. And action doesn't necessarily mean something thrilling and wild. Again, it's another reason I like to go to people's houses or meet them face to face, just in the off chance they're like, actually, can I show you what I mean? Or like, hey, I have this scrapbook all about it. It just, like ask them to show you something or to go somewhere or look at something together. Because it really just makes the tape come alive. So in this case, when I wanted to talk about the history of skateboarding and what it had to do with this curvy pool, I knew that Thrasher magazine, the insanely popular skateboard magazine, was based in San Francisco, and I heard that their editor-in-chief, this guy Jake Phelps, was a real character. He actually died like earlier this year, so rest in peace, Jake Phelps. After much back and forth, I booked an interview with him to talk about the importance of skating in pools, and the interview went terribly. Do you know the story about like where the bean-shaped pool comes from?
The bean shape? What's the bean shape? I don't know. The right henny kidney?
Is that what it's called?
Well, yeah. You don't call it bean shaped.
I don't know. He was really rude. He like touched my face, whatever. And after 30 minutes, he was like, I have something else to do. So he packed up and left, and I was feeling really disappointed and really stupid. So a friend of mine worked at a coffee shop near the Thrasher headquarters, so I just went there and I sulked for a little bit. And then when I hopped on the bus home, lo and behold, Jake Phelps was on the bus with a skateboarder friend of his, and they had their skateboards. And then this is kind of the like shameless part. I ran up to them and I was like, hey, where are you going? Can I come with you? And it turned out they were going to skate just in an abandoned lot nearby. And I just trailed them.
Can't skate here? Nope. Oh man, it looks so good. Just one broken leg, please.
So this is another way that like, these were not my plans. It's just kind of like inviting, it was very lucky, but I do think that there's a way to invite luck by preparing and also by being shameless. And, you know, Jake was not the nicest to me, but it was a very entertaining interview. So it wasn't like a bad interview. You know, like a dull, lifeless interview is a bad interview. And I think that's how you can really bring in the action. I mean, okay. I also never do pre-interviews, like ever, because I do think there's a way to make everyone a good talker, especially if you go to them in person and you like point things out to them and really engage with them. I do think it's hard in a studio if someone's kind of like a dull talker and you can't be there in the room with them. But I think, you know, asking how something in their home or office pertains to the story at hand, or getting them to demonstrate or show you something, getting them outside, out into the field, it just makes it very like lively and fun. And so after I interviewed the, oh yeah, that's luck. And so after I interviewed the skateboarders at Thrasher and talked with the director of Dogtown and Z-Boys, I still need to figure out how those two worlds connected. Like, how did this pool in Finland get to Southern California? And in that initial article that my friend Andrew sent me that I somehow got fixated on, it mentioned this, it made this passing mention to this landscape architect named Thomas Church, and that he was the bridge between these worlds. So I started with Google, of course, and I found out that this landscape architect, Thomas Church, made what is thought to be the first kidney-shaped pool in the United States, and it's actually in Northern California. It's in Sonoma County, just north of San Francisco, and not too far from me. And I knew I wanted to visit, again, to just like be there and just see it and get the sounds of whatever, the sounds of the concrete, the sounds of birds chirping around the pool, just to check it out. And the thing is, this pool is not like a museum. It's just someone's pool. It's just someone's private house. It's not like there are listings or hours or contact information or anything. And actually, this ended up being the hardest section to make. I ended up calling a lot of landscape architects and architecture guides, just begging them to let me interview an expert who could speak about this property, asking if anyone knew anyone who could put me in touch with the family who lives there, again, going to parties and being like, hey, does anyone know anything about like the Donald Garden? Like, just trying to get in touch with the family who lived there. And again, this was another moment where preparation worked really well, like because I had done research about Alvar Aalto, about skateboarding, about this pool. You know, if an expert called me back or if someone wanted to talk out of the blue, I could really, like people could tell I knew what I was talking about. So blah, 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 long story short, I finally received an invitation to go see the pool myself. And again, I knew I wanted to bring in the action, so I wore my bathing suit beneath all my clothes. And when we got to the pool, I asked if I could jump in. That's the pool, it's totally gorgeous. It is bright, pristine, electric blue. And in the center of the pool is an abstract sculpture by Adeline Kent, which has 2 holes through it, one above water and one below. And you can swim through the holes in the sculpture like a dolphin, and it's insanely fun. I know because I tried it. The pool overlooks acres of dusty ranching property. And that was just recorded with a Zoom H2n. Like, no producer, just like me in a bathing suit and like my internal microphone. Oh, and the other thing that whenever I'm in an environment, because, you know, this is something unique about making a show about architecture and design, but I do think it applies to many shows. Like when you go to a place, I like to just use my recorder not only for interviews, but also for notes. Like I'll look around at the landscape and see what I see and what I smell and how it feels to be there, just to like use for writing later. So yeah, remark on the moment is another little trick as a way of illustrating the piece. And so then, basically, the way that pool spread to Southern California was because that pool was like a hallmark of fancy modernist design, because it wasn't a garden, right? It was like concrete and a pool. It wasn't rows and rows of flowers. And so Sunset Magazine really picked up on this new concept for like a garden that was just lawn and concrete and pool, and put it all over Sunset Magazine, and it was really attractive to a lot of Americans who were moving to California and didn't really know the climate, didn't really know how to build a traditional garden in their backyards, and so they kind of just copied the Donald Garden. And so, long story short, that is why there are so many kidney-shaped swimming pools in Southern California. And the connection to Finland is that Thomas Church went to Finland and met Alvar Aalto, saw his pool. There's like a whole crazy thread of connection that brought this pool from Finland to Southern California. But then I was like, how to put this together? Like, where do I begin? Do I start with the skateboarders? Do I start in Finland? Do I start with the middle? Like, do I start talking about this pool in Sonoma? So before I do anything, before I lay out the beats of the story or know the way I want it to go, after every single interview, I do something that is very impractical and very stupid, but I can't help myself. And it's that I transcribe the entire interview in its entirety, which you don't have to do anymore. Like, there are robots that do a pretty good job at that now. And it's not like I'm good at it either. Like, it takes forever, it's agonizing, I hate it so much, it's really slow. It feels like hell when I'm in it. It's my least favorite part, but here's why I struggle through it. You're gonna find a way to dick off anyway. Like, you're gonna find a way to procrastinate. And this is a way to get really, really, really familiar with the tape. And it also, like, I feel like I really know it backwards and forwards, and all the while I'm transcribing, I'm going to parties and I'm pulling people aside and asking for their thoughts. I'm really like marinating in it and thinking about it for as long as it takes, like weeks. Like, it takes forever to transcribe stuff. And the other thing is, especially for people who are really starting out in podcasting, I mean, this is how I learned. Like, I had to listen to myself do interviews and like cringe at the stupid mistakes I made. And it felt like I was performing for the future me. Like, now when I do an interview, I know I'm performing for the future me that has to transcribe that shit. And I know I have to do a good job. I really can't recommend it enough. It's awful and it sucks. But listen, the rest of our jobs are so, so, so fun and cool. So we can just do this one awful thing. But that's the other thing. Like, once I take the time to transcribe everything by hand, the writing comes really quickly. Like, I've spent so long thinking about it and thinking about the way it's gonna go, I can actually write a first draft fairly quickly. And so it's way less daunting than looking at a plain white page, you know, by like just transcribing everything and practicing writing about the topic at hand. And then, of course, you know, the first draft is terrible. Like, it's not a good first draft, but I do it quickly, which gets you right into the editing. And so when I think about editing, I think about this video made by Charles and Ray Eames called Powers of 10. Unfortunately, this GIF is really fast, but you get the idea. But it basically starts out with this couple sitting in a park in Chicago, having a picnic, and then it zooms all the way out into the far reaches of the Milky Way, and then it zooms in into the man's hand, like down into his skin cells. And I think about Powers of 10 when it comes to editing because so much of it is about scope, especially when you're talking about something that appears to be mundane, like how far out do you want to zoom, how far in do you want to zoom? You know, for example, like with this story, how much information do we want to talk about? Like we could have zoomed out really, really far and talked about like where surfing came from. How did surfing come to the United States? And then like tell this whole story and then go on to talk about how skateboarding affected like skate shoes and the shoes we all wear, and it affected the tracking shot in cinema because all these skate rats started to get cameras and film each other. Like you could, so we had to like confine it and be like, all right, what scope are we covering? And we also could have zoomed like way in and talked about the concrete development that made these kinds of curvy pools popular, which is shotcrete. Like, there are just so many things that we could have talked about, and it was about whittling them down and finding the right balance. Because everything is interesting if you zoom all the way out or all the way in. Like, everything has an amazing history, a lot of things have an amazing history, and a lot of things have an amazing long tail to them. So yeah, like, you know, for example, if you're interviewing, say, like an asylum seeker from China, like, how much do you want to make it about their life, and how much do you want to make it about like the situation they're coming from? Like, you have to figure out how far to zoom in and how far to zoom out. And also, you know, in editing, you're zooming in and out again when you're trying to think of what scenes to dwell in. Like, how long should we focus on skateboarding versus how long should we focus on Finland versus how long should we focus on landscape architecture on the West Coast? Yeah, and I find, you know, in audio, it's pretty hard to jump around with a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards because it is a linear medium. I think it was Julie Schneider from This American Life who said there are two ways to tell a story, which is chronological and then a hint and then chronological, or like preview scene then chronological. So I find, like, in radio, we tend to play with the way that time is parceled, not constructed. But who knows? Maybe that'll change. So yeah, basically, my amazing editor, Delaney Hall, on staff determined that the skateboarders were more interesting than the property in Sonoma, so we started with the skateboarders. We zoomed in on them a little more. That's definitely the biggest part. We shortened the part about the property in Sonoma, more or less described it, jumped in the pool, moved on. Oh, and the nice thing is, no one realizes in the course of this story that I didn't actually make it to the pool in Finland because the splash in the pool in Sonoma is so loud. So that's my dirty little secret. And so, yeah, and the other thing about this story that, you know, it combines these three different things, this pool and where it came from in Finland, these skateboarders, and this landscape architect, and it's really woven together by a lot of writing. This is like a very writing-heavy story. And I just wanted to share this really interesting thing about radio writing that Adam Davidson said on the Longform podcast when he was comparing writing for the New Yorker versus writing for radio. He was like, writing for, when you write for print, it's your job to be as like beautiful and flowery and poetic and be the star voice, and then you bring in expert voices to corroborate and be like, yes, that's correct, what he said. And then in radio, it's kind of inverted. Like, you want your experts and the people you interview to have like beautiful, flowery, insightful, poetic language, and then you come in and you say, that's correct, what they said. So it's very interesting, like, who you choose to foreground. And that's one of my favorite things about working in radio, is that you're Ursula the Sea Witch. You can just steal people's amazing voices and weave them into your own story. But yeah, so this ended up just being a 30-minute story, which I never would have thought possible from all the tape I collected. And it's one of my favorite stories because the story itself of like why we have skateboarding in its modern form and why we have these kiddie pools is just like so unlikely. And it's a story about where ideas come from and where they end up. And the other thing about it, like the new, most recent thing about it is ever since we aired this story 2 years ago, this guy in Columbus, Indiana, which is this amazing modernist hub in the Midwest. It's this like small city full of incredible buildings by some of the most famous mid-century modern architects, heard this story and decided that his town needed the town of Columbus, Indiana, needed a new skate park. And he hired Jana, the Finnish skate park architect, because he heard this story. And so the chain of inspiration from like the original pool in the middle of Western Finland out to Sonoma County, to Southern California, and now to this like skate park in Columbus, Indiana, like the chain of inspiration just keeps on going. And I feel so lucky to be a part of it. And I feel so lucky to have woven myself into this story just by telling it. And it was done with a lot of luck and a lot of coincidence, but I really do believe that those elements can be summoned to a degree with a lot of preparation and research and an open mind and a willingness to abandon your plans. So, thank you. Any questions? I think there are microphones. Hey.
Hi, I loved your story.
Oh, thank you.
I'm curious, from start to finish, how long did it take?
So this was an unusual case, because that's a great question. So this took many, many months. And it wasn't like the only story I was working on. I don't have this like luxurious life where I'm just like on the case, like thinking, I was like working on other stories in the meantime. But this was just kind of, I always like to work on a bunch of different stories at once, just kind of like thinking about them and percolating and asking around at parties and annoying my friends. But I think all told, this was like 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hey.
Hello. I was curious about if you can quantify the amount of hours in like the 6 months that you spent researching for this podcast, and it was like 30 minutes.
I mean, it's hard to quantify, again, because I do think so much of my work involves like talking to people in social situations. And the truth of the matter is, when most people ask me where ideas come from, the answer I usually give is parties. Like, it's usually just talking to people and like learning things secondhand and or hearing about what people are thinking about and talking about. So it is kind of hard to quantify, because this is like the burden and the pleasure of doing what you love for a living is like, it bleeds into your whole life. So like a lot of like reading and watching movies and talking to people. So I don't know, I'm so sorry, I don't really have a good answer for that, but that's such a great question.
Hi, I was just wondering, because you started with an idea, but you had to rely on luck and giving up plans, how, from the original idea to what you ended up with, how drastic was that jump? And also when you're pitching ideas, like if you know that the pitch is gonna change, like it's gonna change in the making of it, how do you finesse that with the people you're pitching to? And I don't know, how do you pitch the magic that ends up happening along the way? That's a weird question.
No, that's a really good question. And I'm so sorry to give this answer, but like, I'm terrible at pitching. Like, I've tried to pitch to other shows and I just can't do it. Because it's really, again, this is like an extremely like lucky, like privileged position to be in, that the show I work for is really trusting. I mean, I did pitch this. They weren't like, oh, go off. But there is wiggle room for that luck to come in and the story to change. And the truth of the matter was, I had like a nebulous idea. Like, I presented that article to them and I was like, guys, this pool is from Finland and it's important for skateboarding. I think there's something there. I'm gonna check it out. And I think a lot of it is like, because my airfare to Germany was mostly covered, they were like, just do it. But no, I mean, honestly, for the most part, my stories change all the time from like pitch to final thing. Because I feel like if you already know the whole story, then like, why do you need to report it, you know? There should be a degree of surprise. And I guess it just depends on the organization that you're pitching to, how much of that how much room for wiggle room and change they're willing to accommodate. And I feel like, you know, we get that sometimes, that freelancers will call us and be like, hey, this story is evolving, it's changing in this different way. And usually we're down to consider it and talk about it and flesh it out, because usually it's more interesting. People very rarely are like, hey, sorry, the story's actually like way more boring than I thought. So yeah, thank you.
How do you process the emotions around spending 6 months with a story and then getting the 30 minutes out of it? Do you ever feel like, oh man, but all the rest of it, maybe we could do something else. Maybe we could do like a post or a blog or this or that. You know, like how do you process that?
Oh man. I mean, it's almost just like kind of twice distilled whiskey. It feels like at the end of the day, it's like, aha, yes, It's like all it is. And like, I know that all the work and all the reading and all the talking to people at parties, like I know it's gonna end up as something small. And honestly, 30 minutes was like way longer than what I thought it was. At the time, most 99% invisible stories were like 15 minutes. So I was like, hot diggity, this is a long story. Yeah, but I think that's also why I work on a lot of different stories all at once, to not get too emotionally invested and be like, this is the greatest story I have ever made. Because this was a lark and it could have fallen apart at any moment. I'd say the only like real emotional hardship was being in Finland and thinking that the whole thing was a waste of time and the whole thing was a failure. Like that is the only thing that makes me sad, if it seems like it's for naught. So I guess it just makes me, I'm just glad that it turned into something at all, you know? Thank you.
Hey, I know it might depend like in between like topics or stories, but like how much research do you usually do before being like, oh yeah, this is worth doing something about, or like, oh, this is gonna suck. This is actually not that interesting. Like how much, you know, how far are you ready to go? Like how much time are you ready to spend researching something before deciding, not great, or yeah, let's do this?
That's a great question. I usually read a book. I read like a book. And then I usually the way it works is like, here's something at a party, get a book, read the book, probably read it twice, see if I like it. And you can tell if you find and that's another reason I like talking to people at parties, because if you find yourself excited to talk about it, and you can hear yourself like really coming alive and they're interested in it and you're interested in it, like it cooks, like it works. And I feel like because what we do is, you know, we're speaking, we're communicating to people, and we're so lucky to be able to try it out in real life with the people around us whose opinions we respect. And I think that's usually the test for me. It's like, do I love it? Do the people around me love it? And I've certainly had moments where I'm like, why isn't everyone interested in this thing I'm interested in? Which are hard, but like, you know, you find it out in good time. But yeah.
Thanks. Hi, Avery.
Hi, Carrie.
How are you?
All right, how are you doing?
Well, you know that I don't produce stories or cut tape, but I just wanted to say that I found everything you said to be kind of prescient and easy to apply in lots of other things around podcasting. And so I just wanted to give you a nice shout out, because like I was totally engaged the whole time, and I'm not about to go to Finland and make a story, but I thought that there are so many lessons about prepare, but don't get too emotionally involved. Think about how you're going to edit. Think about what you're saying. Like there's so many aspects of a creative process that you could apply around raising money, around managing, around all kinds of things. And so thank you. I thought it was really great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is this kind of like bro-y, there are some podcasts out there where like, don't prepare at all, just kind of like dive in. And I do think that there's like a gentle balance between like wing it, like be prepared to wing it, but like, you know, do your homework. So yeah, thank you.
Actually, I do not have any specific question, but I want to say also thank you, because
thanks.
I love the way how you describe Finns. I'm from Finland. We are just like that. See, describe.
Is it true? Are you the happiest country in the world?
We might be. We ourselves, we don't believe in that.
I know, you love to complain.
Yeah, and it was so nice to hear the story about the pool, because I know Alvar Aalto, but I didn't know the story.
Oh, amazing.
So that was so nice. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks. Sorry.
You've given me a very lovely, simple word for a thing I realize I've been wrestling with so much, which is simply scope. Do you have any personal indications for yourself when you're when you realize you're too zoomed in or too zoomed out on your latest draft? Like, what is that honing like for you? What does it feel like for you?
That's another thing. Okay, another reason. I feel like the main takeaway is like, go to parties, drink too much, tell your story to everyone. Because I do feel like that's another thing that I practice telling. I do practice telling the story to people. And I always like try starting it in different places or including different things. And you can see when you're like going on too long. Like you can see when someone's not interested. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is just like I'm very lucky to be on a team with amazing editors. So yeah, I'd say that all kind of happens before the writing process and conversations at parties, or it happens after with the editor. But usually in the moment, I'm like, this is all gold, I'm a genius. Like, none of these can go away. The scope is infinite. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to think, it's hard to apply if you're working on something entirely by yourself. Like, definitely need other inputs. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, thank you for today and for all of your work.
Oh, thank you.
My question is about how you navigate a creative and exploratory process when the people that you're talking to are giving you emotionally deep content from their own perspective. And if you end up going in a different direction, or if the project ends up flopping, and they've actually trusted you with that information, this may have been one of the only channels that they've ever had to express that to potentially a larger audience. What are the ethical conversations that you have with yourself, either industry-wide or just personally? How do you handle that?
Oh man, I mean, okay. Caveat, I don't usually do stories like that. I'm very rarely interviewing someone about their incredible personal story. I usually do stories about buildings and inanimate objects, which is one of the reasons I love doing stories about buildings and inanimate objects, because the human element comes through, but I'm not looking someone in the eye and asking why they left their husband. That's not my, that's Anna Sales beat, that ain't me. But I do, so mostly the people who I talk to are academics and docents and historians and designers. But it's true, I really do try to stay in touch and always email everyone who's in the story, which is also a very cringeworthy part, is telling people that the story is out and hoping they like it. I mean, that's the key audience, right? The people you've talked to, and letting them know if it's been, and letting them know if it's been left, if their voice has been left on the cutting room floor or the story has been canceled. I try. It's really hard. I don't always succeed because I'm always balancing a million different voices and a million different stories. But I guess just, I guess I just try to treat them like my friends, like my very professional friends, extremely professional. But yeah, thanks.
Hi.
Hey.
You said that your first drafts are usually terrible. I was wondering how you don't get defeated and you're able to take feedback and work from that point.
I think, who was it? Someone tweeted once, I used to think the most incredible gift was to be published, but now I know the most incredible gift is to be edited. And it's a huge gift to have someone listen to you. And I certainly fight back sometimes, but I really pick my battles. So I guess it's hard. It always sucks. But I think, I've been doing this for going on 7 years now. I'm finally learning how to not be a baby. But I'm mostly just grateful. Especially now, podcast editors are so hard to find. It's so hard to get someone to give you the time of day to listen to their story. So I'm just full of gratitude. Thank you so much. I think I have to cut this off, right? Yeah, I do. Thank you so much. But come say hi later. And thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Avery. Yeah. Everything is interesting. You will find a way to dig around. I'm getting a tattoo. Okay, first of all, thank you so much to our presenters. Thank you for hanging through the first full day. Also, a brief thank you to our sponsors, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Luminary, Spotify, Spreaker, ACAST, Himalaya, the Women's Foundation of California, the Annenberg Foundation, the Los Angeles Times, and KCRW. We are very grateful for the support at Werk. Okay, it's goodbye for now, but I know that many of you will probably see back here at 8 p.m. for the live taping of Here to Slay with Roxanne Gay and Tressie McMillan Cottom, with guests Titina Arnold, Ashley Nicole Black, and Danielle Perez. If not, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning. And also, don't be the doofus. Don't be the doofus who forgets your badge. Don't do that. You know what I mean? I put mine on the rear view mirror if you're driving, yeah? Or like put it in your pocket of tomorrow's pants. Thank you so much for a wonderful first date. We'll see you tomorrow.